There are nights that change everything. Not because you planned them, not because you were ready, but because the universe decides you've been standing still long enough. Cole Bennett was 32 years old, exhausted in the way that only single fathers who work two jobs understand, bone deep, quiet, with nowhere to put it. He wasn't looking for trouble that night. He was just trying to get home before his daughter fell asleep without him again. Then the rain came down like it had a grudge, and a woman stood alone on a flooded Manhattan road beside a car that had given up, and everything Cole thought he knew about his life started coming apart at the seams. He had no idea she was worth billions. He had no idea someone was already trying to kill her. And he had absolutely no idea that stopping to help a stranger in the rain would be the most consequential decision he would ever make. Oh, if this story already has you hooked, hit that like button right now, drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from, and let's see just how far this story travels. Now settle in. This one's going to take you somewhere. The rain started just after 9. Not the soft, cinematic kind that makes Manhattan look like a painting. The brutal, sideways kind that soaks through your jacket in 30 seconds and turns every street into a shallow river. Cole Bennett had seen that sky coming for 2 hours before it finally opened up, and he'd made the mistake of thinking he could beat it home. He hadn't. His 2009 Honda Civic, the one with the cracked rear bumper and the passenger side window that stuck halfway if you didn't know the trick, moved slowly down the service road that cut behind the West Side Highway, the wipers working double time against the downpour. It was the long way home from his second job, the bartending shift at Callahan's that paid cash under the table and kept the lights on when his paralegal salary didn't stretch far enough, which was often, more often than he liked to admit. His phone showed 9:47 p.m. on the dashboard. Lily's bedtime was 9. Mrs. Okafor, his neighbor, was with her. Bless that woman, who watched Lily twice a week without ever once making Cole feel like he owed her more than he could give. But Lily had a thing about falling asleep before he got home. She'd fight it for as long as she could. 7 years old and already stubborn in ways that made Cole simultaneously proud and exhausted. He was running the mental math on tomorrow. School pickup, grocery run, the Sullivan brief he needed to finish before Friday, when his headlights caught something on the shoulder of the road. A car. Black, low, expensive. One of those electric sedans that cost more than Cole's annual salary, sitting with its hazards blinking weakly in the rain. And standing beside it, one hand shielding her eyes from the glare of his headlights, was a woman. Cole slowed without thinking about it. His mother had raised him in a specific way about people broken down on the side of roads, and some habits ran too deep to reason with. He pulled over, killed the engine, and sat there for exactly 2 seconds, weighing whether this was stupid. The rain answered for him by intensifying. He grabbed the old canvas jacket from the back seat, the one Lily had drawn a lopsided star on the sleeve with a fabric marker because she'd wanted him to have something pretty, pulled it over his head, and got out. The cold hit him immediately. That particular October cold that New York saved for nights like this, the kind that found the gaps in everything. He jogged toward the woman, squinting against the rain. She was maybe 5'6", dark hair plastered to her face, wearing a coat that had been expensive before the rain had its way with it. She was on the phone, or trying to be, the screen flickering erratically in the wet. When he got close enough, he could see she'd been standing there a while. Her mascara had tracked down to her jaw. She was shivering, though she was holding herself very still in that particular way people do when they don't want to look like they're falling apart. "Car trouble?" Cole called over the rain. Brilliant opener. He immediately wanted to take it back. She looked at him. Her eyes were dark brown and wary in the way that made sense. Woman, alone, dark road, strange man appearing from nowhere. He took a step back instinctively, keeping his hands visible. "Battery's completely dead," she said. Her voice was steady, controlled. "It won't even accept a jump. The whole system's gone." "That happens with these," Cole said, gesturing at the car. He recognized the model, a Meridian EV, the flagship version, the one that had been on the cover of every tech magazine 2 years ago. Software failure cascades and locks the whole thing out. It's not the battery, it's the firmware. You need a dealership reset. She stared at him. "How do you know that?" "I read too much," he said, "and I've had a lot of waiting around jobs." She almost smiled. Almost. My phone's dying, she said. I've been trying to reach my driver, but he's not. She stopped, looked down the road both directions, and something moved across her face that wasn't just frustration. It was something closer to alertness, like an animal checking the tree line. I can't get through. I can give you a ride, Cole said, or I can wait with you until. A ride, she said. No hesitation, which told him she was cold and wet and done standing on this road, and whatever her usual protocols were about getting into strangers' cars, the rain had negotiated them down. Okay, he said. My car's there. I'm Cole, by the way. Cole Bennett. She looked at him for another beat. Then, Ava? Just Ava. He noticed she didn't offer a last name. He didn't push it. They jogged back to the Civic, and Cole had the brief, humiliating moment of clearing the passenger seat. A half-finished water bottle, Lily's library book about ocean animals, a granola bar wrapper, before she got in. He started the engine and cranked the heat and didn't say anything about the interior, which smelled like old coffee and the lavender air freshener Lily had picked out from the dollar bin at CVS. Where to? He asked. She gave an address in Tribeca. Cole pulled back onto the road. They drove in silence for a minute. The rain eased slightly, which felt like a personal concession. The Ocean Animals book, she said, glancing at the back seat. Is that yours? My daughter's. She's 7, currently obsessed with hagfish, which I did not know hagfish were a thing until 3 weeks ago, and now I know more about them than I ever wanted to. Ava looked at him. Hagfish. They produce slime. A lot of it, defensively. Lily considers this the greatest superpower she's ever heard of. Something shifted in Ava's expression. Not quite a smile, but something adjacent. She sounds like a kid with good instincts. She's better than me at most things, and she's in 2nd grade, Cole said. It's a little humbling. They got to the first light. Cole glanced in the rearview mirror out of habit. He always checked mirrors, a leftover from the years when checking felt necessary, and saw headlights, a black SUV, 3 car lengths back. It had been there since the service road. He didn't say anything. Probably nothing. Manhattan was full of black SUVs. You said you've had waiting around jobs, Ava said. What do you do? Right now, paralegal at a mid-sized firm downtown. Before that, I was finishing a law degree. He paused. Before that, I was at a different firm, bigger one. What happened? Cole felt the familiar compression in his chest. The question that always came eventually and never got easier. I got caught up in something I didn't know I was caught up in, he said. Senior partner I worked under was running a side operation, securities manipulation, client fund misuse. I didn't know. But when it came out, some of it pointed at me because I'd been doing research and filings on accounts he was using. I was cleared eventually, but by then the firm was dissolved. My reputation was... He shrugged. It takes a while to come back from something like that. If you come back at all. He felt her looking at him. Were you angry? She asked. Sure, he said, for about a year. Then I had a daughter to raise, and the anger was just taking up space I needed for other things. Another silence, different from the first one, less guarded. Ava Sinclair, she said. Cole glanced over. Sorry? My last name, Sinclair. I didn't give it before because... She stopped. Force of habit. Cole Bennett had been a paralegal for 4 years and a law student before that, and he had a very good memory for names that passed through the legal and financial worlds he orbited at the edges. Ava Sinclair. The name landed somewhere in the back of his brain and started vibrating. The Meridian EV, he said slowly. You're not just driving the flagship model. She looked out the window. No. You built it. My company did, yes. Cole was quiet for a moment. Ava Sinclair, 29 or 30, if he remembered right. Forbes at 30. One of those profiles where the headline was designed to make you feel like you'd wasted your 20s. Started Novatech out of a converted warehouse in Brooklyn at 22 with 2 engineers and a borrowed server rack. Now the company was worth he didn't even remember the number, something that made regular numbers feel fictional. I read the profile, he said finally. The The one in Wired 2 years ago. Everyone read that one. You seemed annoyed in all the photos. She turned to look at him, and this time the smile actually landed. Brief. A little surprised, but real. I was. The photographer kept asking me to look visionary. I didn't know what that meant with my face. For what it's worth, you looked more annoyed than visionary. That tracks. They pulled onto the West Side Highway proper, traffic moving despite the hour. Cole checked the mirror again. The black SUV was still there. He counted 3 lights it had made consecutive with him. That was less easily explained by coincidence. He didn't say anything yet, but he noted it, filed it, kept it. He pulled up to the address in Tribeca 12 minutes later, a building that announced its own cost without trying. Dark glass and recessed lighting, and a doorman who was already moving toward the car before it stopped. Cole had a quick, involuntary flash of the distance between this building and his apartment in Inwood, which was 40 minutes and several tax brackets north. Thank you, Ava said. She was reaching into her coat pocket, for cash, Cole realized, and he felt the reflex to wave it off. Don't, he said. I know, but don't. He paused. It's fine. Get inside, get dry. She studied him for a beat with those watchful dark eyes, then, You didn't ask me for anything. You don't know me, and you didn't ask me for anything. You were standing in the rain. People don't usually... She stopped herself, shook her head slightly. Thank you, Cole. She got out. The doorman had an umbrella up for her before her second step. Cole watched her walk through the lobby doors, watched them close behind her, and sat there for a moment in the quiet, with only the rain and the heater and the lavender air freshener. He checked the mirror. The black SUV had stopped half a block back. It sat there, engine running, hazards off. No one got out. Cole watched it for 15 seconds. Then he put the Civic in gear and drove north. He told himself it was nothing. The city was full of parked SUVs at 10 at night. He almost believed it. He got home at 10:23. Mrs. Okafor was on the couch with a crossword, reading glasses on the end of her nose, and she gave him the specific look she reserved for when Lily had been a problem. Not an angry look, just a look that transferred full knowledge of all events without requiring words. She lasted until 10:08, Mrs. Okafor said. Then she asked me to tell you, and I'm quoting, that she wasn't actually asleep, she was just resting with her eyes closed. That's the Bennett family defense mechanism, Cole said. I invented it. She's improved on it. He checked on Lily. She was in her bed in the room with the glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling. They'd put them up together last spring, both of them on a step stool, Lily directing the constellation placement with the authority of a 7-year-old who had done extensive research on this. And she was emphatically, definitely asleep. Cole stood in the doorway for a moment, watching her breathe. This was the part of the day he allowed himself to feel things without commentary. The love and the fear that were really the same thing when you were a single parent. The way she was already growing out of the stuffed elephant she'd slept with since she was 2. The small sound she made when she was deep under. He closed the door softly and went to make tea he wouldn't finish and sat at the kitchen table with his laptop and the Sullivan brief he needed to prep. He typed Ava Sinclair Novatech into the search bar before he even realized he was doing it. The results came back dense and recent. The profile he remembered, a feature on the Novatech flagship EV, a board announcement from 8 months ago, and then, from the last few weeks, something that made him sit up straighter. A financial publication, 3 weeks back. Novatech faces questions over proprietary algorithm. Investors seek clarification. Below it, a Business Wire piece. 2 Novatech board members exit quietly amid restructuring. And below that, something from 6 days ago that had a smaller reach but a more specific headline. Sources say Novatech patent on CoreSync AI may be subject to dispute. Competing claims emerge. Cole read that last one twice. CoreSync. He knew that name. It had come up in a brief he'd pulled 3 months ago for his firm, a client who'd been looking at a potential partnership with a mid-sized tech company that had since been quietly absorbed into a larger entity. At the time, CoreSync had been described as a next-generation predictive AI framework, the kind of thing that didn't just improve existing systems, the kind of thing that replaced them entirely. The kind of thing, Cole thought, that someone with the resources and ambition of Ava Sinclair would have built quietly, in-house, and kept off the public radar until it was ready. The kind of thing that, if someone else wanted it badly enough, could make a woman standing on a dark road in the rain feel like a target rather than just a stranded motorist. Cole closed the laptop. He was being paranoid. He was a paralegal who read too much and worked too many hours and had a tendency to construct narratives out of incomplete information. His old supervising attorney had told him that once, not unkindly, just accurately. You see patterns, Cole. That's useful. The problem is you don't always wait to see whether the pattern is real before you start reacting to it. He went to bed. He lay awake for 40 minutes. The black SUV sat in the back of his mind like a stone in a shoe. 3 days passed. Normal days, mostly. The Sullivan brief got filed. Lily came home from school with a permission slip for a class trip to the Natural History Museum and a drawing she'd made of what she called a hagfish defending itself, which was mostly purple scribbles with intent behind them. Cole worked the Callahan shift Thursday night and came home smelling like spilled beer and other people's conversations. Friday morning, he was walking Lily to school, the 6-block route they'd done enough times that she had opinions about every storefront, every crack in the sidewalk, the dog that sat in the window of the apartment on 204th Street that she had named Gerald despite not knowing the dog's actual name. When his phone buzzed. Unknown number. Manhattan area code. He stopped at the corner, let Lily examine a beetle she'd found on the curb, and answered. Cole Bennett? Who's this? A pause. It's Ava. Ava Sinclair. I got your number from... Another pause. It doesn't matter how I got your number. I'm sorry to call like this. I need to ask you something. Cole watched Lily deliberate about the beetle's life choices. Okay, he said. The night you drove me home. The black SUV that followed us. Did you see it? He was quiet for a second. Yes. How long was it behind us? At least from the service road, maybe earlier. I'm not sure. You were standing on the road for a while before I pulled over. Okay. Her voice had that same quality he'd noticed in the rain, controlled, but underneath it something that was working harder than it looked. Okay, yes. Okay. Ava? I'm fine. You don't call someone at 8 in the morning to ask them about a car you followed 3 days ago if you're fine, Cole said. Silence. Something happened, he said. At the company. More silence. Then, how did you... I read the pieces. About core sync, about the board changes. He paused. I'm a paralegal who pays attention to things. I'm not in your business. I just read. Lily had made a decision about the beetle and was now standing, ready to move, eyeing him with 7-year-old impatience. I need to go, he said. I'm taking my daughter to school, but if you want to talk, actually talk. I'll be done at the firm by 6. A very long pause. I don't know why I'm calling you, Ava said. It didn't sound like an accusation. It sounded like someone telling the truth about something they didn't fully understand yet. Because you're running out of people you trust, Cole said, and you're trying to figure out if I'm one of the ones you can. The silence this time had a different quality. 6 o'clock, she said. Yeah. He hung up. Lily was already 3 feet ahead of him on the sidewalk, the beetle apparently released to its own journey. Dad, she called back, you make that face when something's interesting. What face? The one where you're thinking too loud. Cole caught up to her, took her hand. I'll explain it to you when you're 30. That's what you say about everything. Most things become clear at 30, he said. Some things don't. I'll let you know which is which when I find out. They met at a coffee place on Reed Street that Ava had picked. Not the obvious kind of place someone like her would go, not the place with the velvet rope and the celebrity clientele, but a corner spot with wood tables and a chalkboard menu and the kind of lighting that didn't perform at you. Cole got there 5 minutes early and was already reading something on his phone when she walked in, and he noticed 2 things immediately. She was wearing a hat and a plain dark jacket, and she looked like she hadn't slept in longer than 3 days. She sat down without ceremony. How bad is it? He asked. I didn't say it was bad. You called me from an unknown number and asked about a tale from 3 nights ago, Cole said. On a scale of inconvenient to catastrophic, I'm guessing you're not in the middle. Ava wrapped her hands around the coffee cup she'd picked up at the counter. Her nails were bitten. He hadn't noticed that before. The detail made her feel more real somehow, less like the person from the magazine profile. Someone is inside my company, she said. Not a junior employee, not someone low level, someone with executive access. They've been moving information, specifically information related to CoreSync's architectures, the base algorithm, the patent filings we haven't published yet, the integration roadmap. She looked up. CoreSync isn't just an AI framework. She stopped, recalibrated. It would fundamentally change how predictive modeling works in about a dozen industries: finance, logistics, medical diagnostics. The projected licensing value over 10 years is somewhere between $40 and $80 billion. Cole didn't say anything. He let the number settle. And someone wants it, he said. Someone wants it, and they've decided the easiest way to get it is to take it while simultaneously making sure I can't fight back. She turned the cup in her hands. 3 days ago, after you dropped me off, I found out that 2 of my senior engineers had met privately with representatives from a company called Vantage Global Strategies. I didn't know who they were. I looked them up. They're a consulting firm on paper. In reality, she paused. They have relationships with at least 3 major investment groups who've been quietly positioning against Novatech in the market for 6 weeks. Someone is coordinating this. The investors who pulled out, Cole said. The board members who resigned. Those weren't coincidences. She looked at him. No. And the financial press pieces about CoreSync, someone fed them those. Yes, carefully, specifically, to create the appearance of a dispute over intellectual property that doesn't actually exist. She paused. If they can muddy the patent question enough, and if they can produce evidence of financial irregularities at Novatech, which they are apparently working to fabricate, then they can force a regulatory pause on CoreSync's rollout, devalue the company fast enough to trigger certain board provisions, and create a forced acquisition window. Cole sat back. He'd done enough corporate work on the periphery to follow this, had pulled enough documents for cases that touched securities law, and what she was describing was not simple. This wasn't one person and a grudge. This was an operation with legal counsel and financial infrastructure and someone with enough reach to coordinate across media, corporate boards, and investment channels simultaneously. Who are they? He asked. I don't know who's at the top, she said. Vantage Global is the visible part, but they're not the origin. They're an instrument. You have enemies. Everyone in my position has enemies, she said flatly. This is different. This is someone who decided that the most efficient path to CoreSync was to dismantle me entirely. Cole was quiet for a moment. Why are you telling me this? Ava looked at him steadily. Because I've told my security team, and someone on my security team may be compromised. Because I've told my legal counsel, and my legal counsel is now suddenly unreachable. Because I have a small number of engineers I trust completely, and they're working on the technical angle, but they don't have the legal and financial pattern recognition to make sense of what they're finding. And I do. You saw the SUV, she said. Before I did. On a dark road at night, in the rain, in a car you just stopped to pull over. You saw it, you cataloged it, and 3 days later you'd already read the relevant press and formed a structural theory before I said a word. Cole didn't answer that. I'm not asking you to save me, Ava said. It came out direct. No softness around it. I have resources. I have people. What I'm running out of is someone who can think through the legal and financial architecture of what's being done to me without having a conflict of interest or a compromised position. She paused. You have no stake in this. You have no employer who could be leveraged. You have nothing to protect except your daughter and your integrity. And based on 3 days of looking into you, both of those are very much intact. Cole absorbed that. The idea that she'd looked into him should have felt like a violation. Somehow it felt more like she'd shown him a card she was holding, an act of exposure rather than surveillance. You looked into me, he said. Of course I did. No apology. I got into a stranger's car in the rain. I needed to know who drove me home. And? You are exactly what you presented, she said, which is Not common. Cole stared at his coffee cup for a moment. He thought about the Sullivan brief. He thought about Lily and the museum permission slip and the glow-in-the-dark stars on her ceiling. He thought about the version of his life that was hard and steady and manageable, the version he'd rebuilt slowly and carefully from the rubble of the other one. "I have a 7-year-old," he said. "I know. I'm a paralegal. I'm not an investigator. I'm not security. I know what you are," Ava said quietly. "I'm asking if you're willing to use it." The coffee shop hummed around them. Someone's espresso machine roared briefly. Rain had started again outside, lighter than 3 nights ago, just a steady gray. Cole thought about the black SUV. He thought about the way Ava had stood in the rain, not panicked, not performing helplessness, just standing there with that stillness that came from someone who was used to solving her own problems and had run into one she couldn't solve yet. "Tell me everything," he said. "Start from the beginning. The first time you noticed something was wrong." Ava looked at him for a moment. Something shifted in her face, not relief exactly, but something that was adjacent to it, like a muscle unclenching after a long hold. She started talking. They were there for 2 hours and 40 minutes. Cole ordered a second coffee. Ava didn't eat anything, but she drank 3 cups of tea with the focused, automatic quality of someone managing their body on minimum settings. She talked, and he listened, and when she finished sections, he asked questions. The specific, targeted kind that came from 4 years of pulling documents and building legal chronologies. Questions about dates and access, and who had been in which meetings, and who had signed off on which file transfers. By the time the coffee shop started looking at them apologetically about the dinner rush, Cole had filled 6 pages of his legal notepad, and his brain was doing the kind of rapid assembly work that it did when pattern pieces started locking into place. "Vantage Global filed as a Delaware LLC 18 months ago," he said, just before Novatech's Core Sync development entered its final phase. Ava stared at him. "How do you know when our development phase is? Your Series D funding round was announced 16 months ago. The announcement referenced next-generation AI integration reaching completion phase. 18 months before that announcement, someone set up the vehicle they'd use to attack you." He paused. "They knew before you went public. They had inside knowledge of your development timeline, which means the infiltration started before anyone outside the company should have known about Core Sync," Ava said slowly. She'd gone very still. "Yes." She looked at the table. That narrows it to a very small number of people," Cole said. "The original engineering team, your early investors, and whoever they talked to." The color had drained slightly from her face. Not fear. Cole was beginning to understand that Ava Sinclair didn't do fear in the conventional direction. It was something more like the expression of someone doing math and not liking where the numbers were leading. "I'll need document access," Cole said. "Whatever you can give me without it going through channels that might be watched. Board filings, the investor exit paperwork, whatever you have on Vantage Global. And I need you to not tell anyone I'm looking at this." "Why?" "Because if someone's been inside your company for 18 months, they're patient and careful," Cole said. "The moment you bring in a new face with access, they'll know. And right now, the only advantage you have is that they don't know you've identified the shape of what they're doing." Ava nodded slowly. "My daughter is not involved in this," Cole said. It came out harder than the rest because it was the one line that required no analysis. "Whatever this is, she's not in it. Understood. And I'm not..." He stopped. "I'm not on a payroll. I'm not your employee. I'm someone looking at documents and telling you what I see. If I find something that requires actual legal action or law enforcement, we go to law enforcement. Of course. Even if that's complicated." "Even then," Ava said. She met his eyes. "Cole, I'm not trying to circumvent justice here. I'm trying to get to a position where I can actually access it." He believed her. He thought about whether he should trust that belief, given that she was a billionaire with enormous incentives to tell him whatever kept him useful. He decided that the belief was based on something more than her words. It was based on the way she held herself in this coffee shop, anonymous and tired, the way she'd bitten her nails down, the way she'd asked him questions about his daughter like someone who was genuinely interested rather than strategically warm. He'd been wrong about people before, He knew that. He was going to be careful. But he was going to look at the documents. There. He picked up Lily at 6:30, which was late by their standards, and she informed him during the walk home that her class was doing a project on ecosystems and that she had decided to do hers on the deep ocean, specifically the zone where hagfish lived, because, and this was a direct quote, "The deep ocean is the most extreme place, and I feel like it's underrepresented." "You're 7, Cole said. "You know what underrepresented means?" "Ms. Torres said it about different cultures in books," Lily said. "I think it applies to ecosystems, too." "You're probably right," Cole said. "Dad?" "Yeah." "You have the thinking too loud face again." Cole looked down at her. She was looking up at him with those brown eyes that had gotten the expressiveness he'd never quite had. Her mother's gift. One of the few things about the end of that relationship that Cole had no ambivalence about. Maya had been many things. She'd given Lily good eyes. "I met someone," Cole said carefully. "Someone who needs some help with a problem. It might take up some of my time." "What kind of problem?" "A complicated one." "Is it a legal problem or a people problem?" Cole thought about that. "Both," he said. "I think it's both." Lily considered this with the gravity she applied to serious things. "Are you going to help?" "I'm going to try." "Then stop making the thinking too loud face," she said. "You always do that when you already know what you're going to do, but you're still deciding if it's okay. But if you already know, then you already decided." Cole stared at his 7-year-old. "You read too much," he said. "I know," she said, in a tone that suggested this was not a problem she intended to address. "What?" The first package of documents arrived encrypted to a temporary email address Sunday morning, 23 pages of board minutes and investor correspondence that Ava had photographed herself rather than sent through any company server. Cole spread them across his kitchen table after Lily was asleep, the apartment quiet except for the radiator's irregular clicking, and started building the picture. It took him 3 hours. By midnight, he had a timeline on a yellow legal pad that showed exactly how the operation had been structured, when the seed money for Vantage Global had moved, how the initial board member had been approached, the exact sequence in which the press pieces had been orchestrated to create a self-reinforcing narrative of Novatech instability. It was elegant, in the cold way that well-constructed fraud was elegant. Whoever had designed this understood corporate law, securities regulation, and media dynamics with equal fluency. This wasn't an opportunistic attack. This was something that had been planned, slowly and carefully, by someone who had known for a long time exactly what CoreSync was worth and exactly what it would take to get it. Cole sat back, looked at his notes, then he looked at the one thread that didn't fit the pattern. A single board member who'd stayed, who hadn't resigned quietly with the others, who by all appearances had no contact with Vantage Global. The name kept appearing in the documents at odd angles, not prominently, not in a way that signaled obvious guilt, but in the way that something appears when it's trying not to be noticed. Edmund Harlow, co-founder of one of Novatech's original seed investors, 61 years old, clean reputation, long tenure in Silicon Valley before he'd moved into advisory roles. Cole underlined the name. He picked up his phone. It was too late to call, and he texted Ava instead. "The documents are useful. I need you to tell me about Edmund Harlow. Everything you know about him. Not what's on paper. What you know." He put the phone down and didn't expect an answer until morning. His phone buzzed 4 minutes later. "How did you find him that fast?" Cole looked at the message for a second, then typed back, "Because he's the only one who's invisible. Everything else in here was designed to be found eventually." He wasn't. A long pause, then, "I trusted him. He was the first person who believed in the company." Cole stared at that message, felt the weight of it. Not his weight to carry, but adjacent to it. The specific betrayal of someone you built a thing with. "I know," he typed. "That's why it worked." He set the phone down, turned back to his legal pad, and wrote Edmund Harlow's name at the top of a new page. Outside, October rain came back for a second visit, streaking down the window above the fire escape, washing the city into its familiar night shapes. Cole Bennett, paralegal, single father, someone who read too much and couldn't stop noticing things, sat at his kitchen table with a cup of cold tea and a legal pad, and the beginning of something that was going to get much more complicated before it got any simpler. He didn't know yet how far it would go, but he knew, with the clarity that came to him when patterns locked into place, that what had been set in motion 3 nights ago on a flooded road in the rain was not something he could unstart. He turned to the next page of his notepad, and he kept going. Edmund Harlow lived in a townhouse in the West Village that cost more than Cole would earn in 40 years, which was not the kind of thought Cole entertained bitterly. He'd made a kind of peace with financial disparity the way you made peace with weather, but it was the kind of thought that arrived automatically when you were standing on the sidewalk across the street at 7 in the morning with a cup of bodega coffee, watching the lights on the second floor. He wasn't there to confront anyone. He was there because he'd learned, in 4 years of paralegal work and 2 years of law school before that documents told you structure and people told you motive. And the gap between those two things was usually where the truth lived. He'd looked at Edmund Harlow's public record the night before until his eyes burned. Board positions, published interviews, the investment history that stretched back to the early days of Silicon Valley, when everyone who'd been in the right room at the right time had come out with money and reputation, and the kind of confidence that calcified into certainty by 60. Clean, everything clean. Which was either because Edmund Harlow was a man of integrity or because he was very good at the kind of tidiness that required active effort. Cole stood there long enough to finish the coffee and watch the second-floor light go off, then the first-floor light come on, and then a car, a gray town car, not a flashy choice, pull up and wait. Edmund Harlow came out at 7:20 in a dark overcoat, unhurried, carrying a leather portfolio and moving like a man who had nowhere pressing to be because everywhere he needed to be would wait for him. He got in the car without looking around. The car pulled away. Cole didn't follow. He just watched. He called Ava on the walk to the subway. He got in a gray town car this morning, Cole said when she picked up. Registered plates. I got a partial. I can run it. Where does he usually go on Monday mornings? Board breakfast at the Harvard Club, Ava said. She sounded like she'd been awake for hours. First Monday of every month. He never misses it. Who else goes? Rotates? Business contacts, old friends from the investment community, sometimes people from his other board positions. She paused. Cole, if you're thinking about going in there, I'm not going in there, he said. I don't need to. I need to know who he's been in the same room with for the last 6 months. Not publicly. The informal stuff. Dinners, private events, anything where he'd be meeting people off the record. I don't have that. Does he have an assistant? He has a personal secretary, Margaret something. She's been with him for 12 years. Does she like him? A pause. What? Assistants who've been with someone for 12 years either genuinely like them or they've built a specific tolerance, Cole said. The ones who like them protect everything. The ones who've built tolerance usually have opinions about things they've seen. I don't know, Ava said. I've met her twice. Cole filed that. I'll find another way in, he said. Send me whatever you have on his travel in the last 8 months. Flight records if you can get them. Not official, just whatever your security team pulled before you stopped trusting your security team. Silence on her end for a moment. Then, you said you were going to look at documents and tell me what you saw. I was, Cole said. Then I looked at the documents and saw more than I expected. Another silence. Are you sure you want to do this? Cole was at the subway entrance. A woman pushed past him with a stroller and he stepped aside automatically. He thought about the question, not whether he wanted to. That wasn't the right framing. Whether he could look at what he'd found on his kitchen table at midnight and put it back in a folder and go back to the Sullivan brief. Send me the travel records, he said, and went down into the subway. The week that followed had a particular texture to it, the texture of 2 parallel lives running simultaneously without touching, like 2 channels on the same frequency that could hear each other but not quite overlap. During the day, Cole was at the firm. He filed briefs, pulled research, answered emails from attorneys who needed things quickly and forgot to say thank you. He ate lunch at his desk. He called Mrs. Okafor to confirm Tuesday pickup. He was, to all visible appearances, exactly what he appeared to be. At night, and during the 45 minutes he had between the firm and Callahan's on Thursday, he worked on Edmund Harlow. What emerged, slowly, from the records Ava sent and the public filings Cole cross-referenced and the one conversation he had with a former colleague who'd done securities work and owed him a favor, what emerged was not a monster. That was the uncomfortable part. Edmund Harlow was a man who had made a series of decisions that were individually defensible and collectively damning, the way that a lot of the worst things Cole had seen in his legal life operated. Each step had logic. The aggregate was ruinous. Harlow had invested in Novatech's seed round 7 years ago because it was a genuinely good investment, and because he'd seen in 22-year-old Ava Sinclair something that real investors rarely encountered: a builder, not a pitchman. He'd mentored her, in the limited way that people like him mentored people like her, which involved access and introductions, and the specific currency of being vouched for by the right name. Then, 4 years ago, a different opportunity had presented itself. One of Harlow's other investment vehicles, a private equity structure that Cole could only see the shadow of, not the substance, had become entangled with a consortium that was positioning aggressively in AI infrastructure. Cole couldn't get to the name of the consortium from the records Ava had given him, but the shape of it was visible in the financial movements, a group with deep resources and a long horizon, the kind of patient accumulation that didn't care about quarterly returns because it was building towards something structural. Harlow had been, Cole thought, the kind of man who told himself there was a way to serve both, to protect Novatech on one side while facilitating access for the consortium on the other, the kind of self-deception that required intelligence to sustain, because you had to keep building new rationales for each new step, and that kind of sustained construction took real cognitive effort. Stupid people couldn't maintain it. Harlow was not stupid. Cole wrote all of this down on his legal pad in the handwriting that Lily had once described as like you're angry at the paper, and then he stared at what he'd written and felt the familiar combination of recognition and frustration that came with seeing a thing clearly without yet being able to do anything about it. He had a shape. He didn't have evidence, not the kind that moved. He needed to get closer. The message from Ava came on Wednesday at noon. Something happened. Can you meet today? Not tonight. Now, if possible. Cole was in the middle of a research pull. He finished the page, saved the document, and typed back. Callahan's is closed for lunch. Back alley entrance on Watt Street. 20 minutes. She was there in 18, which told him she'd been close. She was in the same kind of anonymous outer layer, dark jacket, hair pulled back, but something about the way she was moving was different from the coffee shop version of her. Tighter, more compressed. The back entrance of Callahan's was a door that opened onto a small supply area, cases of liquor and a folding chair that the delivery guys used. And Cole had the key because Frank, the owner, trusted him with the building and with various other small responsibilities that came with being the person who showed up reliably and didn't take money from the register. Cole unlocked it and they sat on overturned milk crates with the door cracked for light. They filed it, Ava said. Cole knew what that meant but asked anyway because he needed her version. Filed what? A formal complaint with the SEC, yesterday afternoon. She had her phone out and handed it to him. A document, photographed. He read it quickly. Someone inside Novatech, or appearing to be inside Novatech, has provided a sworn statement to the SEC alleging that I personally authorized the misappropriation of investor funds to acquire IP that Novatech then patented as original development. Cole read the specific language. It was precise and detailed in the way that fabricated evidence was when it had been prepared by someone who understood exactly what the evidentiary standard required. Not sloppy, the opposite of sloppy. The kind of filing that would take months to unwind even if every single allegation was demonstrably false, because the regulatory process didn't move at the speed of truth. The account numbers referenced in here, Cole said. Do any of those correspond to real Novatech accounts? One does. A development fund account that was legitimately used for R&D acquisitions. The rest are... She pressed her lips together. They're accounts I don't recognize, which means either they're fabricated or someone's been operating accounts in my company's name that I don't know about. Cole looked up at her. The second option. I know, she said quietly. I know that's what it means. This isn't just about Core Sync anymore, Cole said. They've built infrastructure inside your company. This has been running for a long time. How long? Cole thought about what he'd constructed on his legal pad. Maybe 4 years, he said. maybe longer. The money movements I can see in the board documents go back at least 3 years, but the relationship that enabled it probably started before that. Ava was quiet for a moment. In the thin light from the cracked door, she looked older than the magazine profile version of her. Not worse, just more real, in the way that people looked when you saw them carrying actual weight instead of the posed version. "My CFO called me this morning," she said. "Marcus Reeves. He's been with me for 5 years. He told me that he's been contacted by the SEC investigation and that his legal counsel has advised him to. He said he needs to cooperate fully and that he can't speak to what the evidence suggests." She stopped. "Marcus, he has a daughter Lily's age. I went to her birthday party last spring." "What did you say to him?" "I told him to do whatever his counsel advised." Her voice was level. "Because I'm not going to be the person who asks people to protect me at personal cost to themselves. That's not—" She stopped. "That's not who I want to be." Cole looked at her. "He may not be betraying you. Or he may have been part of it from the beginning. Or the investigation has frightened him, and he's protecting himself in a situation where the evidence looks genuinely bad, and he doesn't know what's real." Cole set the phone down. "There's a difference between a traitor and someone who's scared. Both look the same from the outside." Ava absorbed that. "How do you tell them apart?" "Usually by waiting to see what they do when they think no one's watching," Cole said. "But you may not have time to wait." The door rattled slightly, wind in the alley, and both of them looked up instinctively. Nothing. Cole noted that Ava's reaction time was fast, which meant she was running on adrenaline and suspicion, which meant she wasn't sleeping and probably not eating enough, both of which would eventually cost her. "You need to slow down," he said. She looked at him like he'd suggested something in a foreign language. "I mean it," he said. "Not because this isn't urgent, because you're the most important component in whatever you're building to fight back. And if you burn out or make a mistake because you're running on 4 hours of sleep and surveillance paranoia, the whole thing collapses." He paused. "Have you eaten today?" "I had—" That hesitation means no. "Cole, you're one of the most logistically capable people I've encountered," he said, "and you're managing your own body like a software system you keep delaying the update on." She stared at him. "Did you just compare me to a software system with a pending update?" Imperfect analogy. The point stands. Something in her face shifted. Not the smile exactly, but the first visible release of tension he'd seen since she'd walked through the door. She let out a breath. "There's a place on Greenwich that does good soup." "Let's go then." They ate soup at a small table by the window with the midday city moving past outside, and Cole asked her questions that had nothing to do with the case. Not strategically, or not entirely strategically, but because he was genuinely curious, and because the shape of Ava Sinclair that he was building in his understanding had gaps in it that the documents and the crisis context didn't fill. She'd grown up in Connecticut. Father was a mechanical engineer, mother was a high school chemistry teacher. Nothing spectacular about the childhood. Solidly middle class, 2 siblings, a house near a train line. She'd been taken apart and good at putting things back together since before she could articulate why. At 16, she'd rebuilt a dead laptop from spare parts and used it to run a small tutoring network that made enough money to pay for her own college applications. Not because her parents couldn't afford the application fees, but because she'd wanted to know if she could. "Is that what Novatech was?" Cole asked. "Wanting to know if you could?" "Partly," she said. She was eating, he noted with private relief. Properly eating. Not the performative picking at food of someone going through motions. "Partly it was because I kept seeing a gap between what predictive modeling could theoretically do and what it actually did in practice. Not because the math was wrong, because the data architecture was wrong. Everyone was building smarter algorithms on top of the same flawed foundational structure, and I thought—" She paused. "I thought if you got the foundation right, you could build something that changed everything downstream. CoreSync is that foundation." "And it works," Cole said. "It works," she said simply. "That's the part that keeps me— That's the thing I keep coming back to when the rest of this is—" She gestured vaguely at the space between them. "It works. I know it works. And someone is going to take it and use it and benefit from it. And the only question is whether I'm there to make sure it's used the right way. Cole looked at her. You're not mainly upset about the company. Of course I am. You're upset about the company, but the part that actually... He paused, choosing the word carefully. The part that actually hurts is the idea of CoreSync being taken and used badly, by someone who's willing to do this to get it. Ava was quiet for a moment. Yes, she said. That's the part I can't... She stopped. That's the part. Cole nodded, filed that away not as intelligence, but as understanding. There was a difference, and he'd learned to honor the difference. Tell me about the SEC filing's signatory, he said, bringing it back. The person who gave the sworn statement, name redacted in what you showed me. Who do you think it is? There are maybe 8 people with enough internal knowledge to make those specific allegations, Ava said. The account numbers, the transaction dates, the project codes, whoever this is, they had access to finance and R&D both. That's a very short list. Walk me through it. She did. Cole took notes on a napkin, which was not ideal, but was what he had. By the end of the soup, they had 3 names that fit the technical access profile, and Cole had quietly flagged one of them based on a reference Ava had made 20 minutes earlier without realizing its significance. Daniel Cho, Cole said. You mentioned he was the one who first flagged the Vantage Global meetings to you. Ava blinked. He reported the other engineers' meetings, yes. But you said he was in the building the same day as one of those meetings. He said he was in a different conference room, same floor, separate meeting. Did you verify that? The silence stretched. I trusted him, she said. Not defensively, just the plain fact. He may have reported those meetings because he needed to demonstrate loyalty, Cole said. Because if you found out about them through another channel and he hadn't told you, his position became untenable. Reporting them first cost him nothing if he'd already done what he needed to do. Ava had gone very still across the table. If Daniel is the signatory, then the evidence in that SEC filing is going to look very real, Cole said, because some of it is going to reference things that only someone with his access and his specific knowledge could know. And the rest of it will be so carefully constructed around real facts that distinguishing the fabricated elements will require forensic accounting and a hell of a lot of time. He watched her process this. It was not a comfortable thing to watch. The moment when a picture of betrayal that had been abstract became specific and human. Daniel Cho, according to the 2 minutes of background she'd given him over soup, had been her hire. Her recommendation. Someone she'd brought in because she'd seen something she recognized. I could be wrong, Cole said. But you don't think you are. He didn't answer that. 3 days later, Cole was wrong about Daniel Cho. Not entirely wrong. Cho had been in contact with Vantage Global, that part held, but wrong about the SEC filing. He found out from a public records pull on Wednesday evening that the signatory identifier on the complaint, partially visible in metadata Ava's security contact had extracted, corresponded to a legal entity rather than an individual. The sworn statement had been submitted by someone operating through a shell professional service, the kind of structure used when you needed a human signature on a document but didn't want the human traceable. This was, if anything, worse. It meant the operation had legal architecture sophisticated enough to manufacture witness testimony, which meant they had, somewhere in their structure, a legal team working on this with the same patience and precision as the financial team. Cole sat with that for a while. He was at Callahan's Thursday night, pouring drinks on autopilot the way you did after 1,000 shifts, when a man sat at the far end of the bar and ordered a scotch. Neat and spent 40 minutes not looking at Cole directly, but always knowing where Cole was. Cole noticed this the way he noticed most things. Quietly, without reacting, filing it away. The man left without finishing his drink. Cole memorized his face. On the walk to the subway, he called Ava. I think I've been flagged, he said. A sharp silence. What happened? Someone sat at my bar for 40 minutes and watched me without watching me. It's a technique. Not subtle to someone who's looking for it, but they probably weren't expecting someone who'd look for it. Cole, it means the operation knows you're not alone, he said. It means someone has been watching your movements, and they've identified me as a contact. He paused. How many times have we been in proximity in the last 10 days? 3, if you count the coffee shop. Then they've been watching you since before the coffee shop, where they found me through a different channel. He thought about this for a moment. Has anyone at Novatech been asking about your personal contacts? Outside the company, I mean. Not that I know of, but I'm not sure what I know anymore. Okay. He was at the subway entrance again. He didn't go down. I need to talk to someone. A contact of mine. He does financial investigations, civil side. He's licensed and careful. I've been keeping this between us, but I need a second set of eyes on the Harlow material before I can move on it. And I need it done fast. Who is this person? His name is Ray Okonkwo. He was a federal investigator for 12 years before he went private. I helped him on a document review 2 years ago when he was working a pension fraud case, and we've stayed in touch. He's careful, he's clean, and he's not connected to anything in your world. Ava was quiet for long enough that Cole started to say something. Okay, she said, but if he turns out to be a problem, you'll tell me, and I'll deal with it. Yes. He said it before she could. I know. That's not exactly what I was going to say. What were you going to say? A pause. I was going to say, be careful, Cole. He held his phone for a second. It was a simple sentence. He wasn't sure why it landed the way it did. Yeah, he said. I will. Ray Okonkwo was a big man in his late 40s who had the specific quality of stillness that came from years of watching other people make mistakes while he didn't. He had an office in Chelsea that was organized with the ruthless efficiency of someone who'd learned in federal service that disorder cost cases, and he had a habit of letting silences extend longer than was comfortable for most people, which Cole had always found useful because it meant Ray didn't say things he didn't mean. Cole laid it out over 2 hours on Friday afternoon. The documents, the timeline, the Harlow theory, the SEC filing, the surveillance at the bar. Ray didn't interrupt. He read things when Cole offered them, made small marks on a notepad in his own private shorthand, and occasionally made a sound that was not quite a word. When Cole finished, Ray was quiet for a while. Vantage Global, Ray said finally. You know them? I know a filing that crossed my desk 8 months ago from a client who was looking at a suspicious acquisition in the logistics sector. Vantage Global was the acquiring vehicle. We couldn't connect it to anything then because the trail went cold. He tapped the edge of his notepad. Same structural signature as what you're describing. Delaware LLC. Minimal public presence. Capital sourced through a layered structure I couldn't fully unpack. The consortium behind it, Cole said. The actual origin of the money. Can you get to it? I can try harder than I was trying 8 months ago, Ray said. When it was logistics, I didn't have reason to push past the first wall. If this is the same entity and they're moving into AI infrastructure, he leaned back, that's a different scale of problem. Who would have that kind of capital and that kind of patience? Cole asked. Ray gave him a look that said, I've thought about this question more than you have. You're talking about an operation that's been running for years, that can manufacture SEC complaints and compromise corporate insiders and run surveillance on private individuals without leaving obvious tracks. That's not one rich person with a grievance. That's an institutional player. Could be a sovereign wealth fund using cutouts. Could be a private equity consortium with certain interests in controlling AI development gates. Could be He paused. Could be someone who's been positioning for a world where the company that controls the foundational algorithm for predictive AI controls a lot more than just one product. Cole thought about what Ava had said. It would fundamentally change how predictive modeling works in about a dozen industries. If you control the foundation, Cole said slowly, you control the licensing. You control who gets access and at what price and on what terms. You control which industries develop along which lines. Yes, Ray said simply. Cole sat with that for a moment. The scale of it had a particular quality, not paralyzing, but clarifying. The kind of scale that told you exactly how serious the people on the other side were. I need the consortium name, Cole said. That's the load-bearing piece. Everything else is scaffolding. I'll work the financial angle, Ray said. Harlow's investment vehicle, I can get into the structure of that if you give me the registration numbers. That might give us the thread. There's a timeline problem, Cole said. The SEC complaint will trigger a formal investigation process. If Novatech's operating ability gets constrained before we have something to bring to the right people, I know, Ray said. Give me 5 days. Cole stood. 4. Ray looked up at him with the specific expression of a man who is going to take 5 days regardless. 4.5. Done. Cole was on his way out of Ray's building when his phone buzzed. Not a call. A news alert. He'd set a search notification on his phone weeks ago for Novatech, a habit from the legal work. He looked at the alert. It was from a financial wire service. Short piece, the kind that went up fast from a journalist who'd been fed something by a source. The headline, Novatech CEO Ava. Sinclair. Under SEC scrutiny, sources describe pattern of systemic irregularities. Cole read it standing on the sidewalk in the cold. The piece was careful. The specific kind of careful that told him someone with legal knowledge had shaped what the journalist was allowed to publish. No direct allegations, just sources and suggestions, and the particular architecture of implication that let a story land hard without exposing anyone to defamation risk. The comments section, visible in the preview, had already begun. He didn't read it. He called Ava. She answered on the first ring, which meant she'd already seen it. I know, she said. Are you okay? A pause. I'm in my office. I've been in my office for 3 hours watching my team read it on their phones and not make eye contact with me. Cole heard something in her voice that hadn't been there before in any of their conversations. Not the controlled steadiness, not the compressed worry, but something rawer than either. The specific hurt of being seen wrongly by people who knew you. Listen to me, he said. Cole, listen to me. He kept his voice level. This is what it's supposed to feel like. This moment, right now. This is the designed output. They want you to feel isolated and doubted by the people around you, because that feeling makes you reactive, and reactive people make mistakes. A silence. You're not alone in this, he said. You have Ray working the financial thread. You have engineers who know what CoreSync actually is and how it was actually built. You have documentation that predates all of this. And you have me looking at Harlow. He paused. None of that is nothing. Another silence, longer. She stopped. I don't usually need people to... She stopped again. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, Cole said. Thank me when we have the consortium name. You think Ray can get it? I think Ray spent 12 years with the federal government developing a specific skill set, and I've watched him use it. Yes. I think he can get it. He heard her exhale. Go home, he said. Don't mean your office. I mean wherever you actually sleep. Eat something. Don't look at the comments. Tomorrow morning you come back and you're functional. You're very bossy for a paralegal. I'm a paralegal who's been awake until midnight for 11 days because someone is running a sophisticated financial and legal operation against a person I've decided to help, Cole said. So I'm allowing myself some directness. A pause. And then, something he hadn't expected, a small, tired laugh, genuine, short, real. Okay, she said. I'm going home. Good. He hung up and started walking toward the subway. The city moved around him in its indifferent early evening rhythm. People heading home, taxis splashing through leftover rain, the particular Manhattan quality of 10,000 parallel urgencies that somehow managed not to collide. Cole's phone buzzed again. A text from Lily, which meant Mrs. Okafor had lent her the phone. Dad, are you coming home? I found out something important about anglerfish. He typed back, on my way, 40 minutes. Tell the anglerfish to wait. The reply came back in seconds. They don't wait, Dad. They live in the dark, and they make their own light. Cole read that twice, then put his phone in his pocket and went down into the subway. Ray called on Sunday morning at 8:15, which was not 4 days and not 4.5 days, and Cole answered immediately. I found the wall, Ray said. He sounded like a man who had been awake all night and was running on the energy of having found what he was looking for. The outer shell of the consortium. It's a holding structure registered in the Cayman Islands, operating name Helios Capital Group. Sounds generic, looks generic. 7 layers of corporate structure between it and any identifiable principals. Can you get through the layers? Not fast enough through legal channels, Ray said. But here's the thing, Cole. One of Helios's subsidiary vehicles has a public-facing investment in a company I recognized, a real estate infrastructure company, and that company had a board member in common with Vantage Global for about 9 months before the board member quietly resigned. Cole was sitting at his kitchen table, Lily still asleep down the hall, coffee half made. Who's the board member? Ray said the name. Cole closed his eyes for a second, opened them. Say that again, he said. Ray said it again. The name was not Edmund Harlow. The name was a name Cole had seen twice in the board documents Ava had given him. Not prominently, not in a position of obvious power. A name that appeared as a legal signatory on 2 documents, the kind of administrative presence you stopped noticing because it looked like furniture. The name was Martin Cross, described in Novatech's board records as an independent legal advisor, retained 18 months ago. Cole thought about how invisible Harlow had looked in the documents, how he'd underlined the name because of that invisibility. Then he thought about how completely invisible Martin Cross had been, not because Cole had noticed his invisibility, but because Cole hadn't noticed him at all. Harlow was the distraction, the visible, almost hidden thing that drew the eye. Cross was the mechanism. Ray, Cole said, I need everything you can find on Martin Cross. Already started, Ray said. Cole. The people behind this. If Helios is what I think it is, these aren't criminals in the conventional sense. They're institutional. They have relationships with people in regulatory positions. They have lawyers who are better resourced than most government departments. If you're going to use this, I know, Cole said, you need to use it in a way they can't make disappear, which means you need, I know, Cole said again. I'm thinking about it. He hung up. The coffee maker finished behind him. He poured a cup he didn't taste. Down the hall, he heard Lily begin to stir. The particular series of small sounds that preceded her actually getting up, the rustling and the half-audible conversation she had with herself in the transition from sleep to awake, the sound of the stuffed elephant being shifted. Cole sat at the table with his cup and his legal pad and the name Martin Cross written at the top of a new page. He was thinking about Ray's last point, you need to use it in a way they can't make disappear. And he was thinking about what that meant at the scale they were operating at. He'd been approaching this the way he approached legal work. Gather, organize, present through appropriate channels. But appropriate channels could be compromised. Appropriate channels could be slow. And the people running this operation had demonstrated a consistent talent for understanding exactly how appropriate channels worked and exactly how to use that understanding against anyone trying to navigate them. There was another way. Cole didn't fully form the thought yet. He let it sit at the edges. Lily appeared in the kitchen doorway in her pajamas with the elephant under one arm, her hair doing the thing it did in the morning that required negotiation. She assessed him with those sharp brown eyes. You didn't sleep much, she said. Not accusatory, just a fact. I slept some, Cole said. Did you figure out the complicated problem? Part of it. Lily came and climbed onto the chair across from him and put the elephant on the table between them. The anglerfish thing, she said, that I texted you about. They live where it's completely dark, right? So they make their own light. But the light isn't just for them, it's to attract things toward them. Cole looked at his daughter. The light looks like it's offering something, she said, but it's actually bait. Cole was quiet for a moment. Lily, he said carefully. I'm 7, not dumb, she said. Cole looked at his legal pad, at the name Martin Cross, at the structure he'd been building, the careful, quiet, analytical work of understanding the operation that had been designed to consume Ava Sinclair. He thought about bait. He thought about what it would take to bring people out of 7 layers of corporate structure and into the light. He looked at his daughter, who had gone to get cereal and was now standing on her toes to reach the cabinet, completely unbothered by the weight of whatever was happening at the kitchen table. What do you want to do today, what? He asked. Museum, she said immediately. We have the permission slip. Ms. Torres said families can come on Sundays if they want. Okay, Cole said. Museum. He folded the legal pad closed. The thinking would continue, he knew. It was running in the background now and wouldn't stop. But Lily was right about at least one thing. He already knew what he was going to do. He'd known since Ray said Martin Cross's name, maybe since earlier than that. The question now was how to do it in a way that the light attracted the right things. The plan took shape the way most things worth doing took shape. Not cleanly, not all at once, but in pieces that arrived at odd hours and required revision and had gaps that Cole stared at until the gaps told him what they needed. The core of it was simple enough, which was the part that worried him. Simple plans had elegance, but elegance in a situation like this one was a warning sign, not a reassurance. It meant there were variables he hadn't accounted for yet. Here was what he knew. Martin Cross was the legal mechanism connecting Helios Capital Group to the operation against Novatech. Cross had been positioned inside Novatech's board structure as an independent legal advisor, which gave him both access and plausible deniability. He'd been on that board for 18 months, exactly the timeline that corresponded with the escalation of the operation. Ray had found 3 instances in which Cross had used his advisory role to request document access that went beyond any legitimate legal need. CoreSync's integration architecture, Novatech's IP assignment agreements, and the structural details of Ava's personal ownership stake in the company. What Cross had done with that information fed upward through Vantage Global to Helios. What Helios had done with it had put an SEC complaint in motion and manufactured enough financial ambiguity to begin collapsing the trust structure that Novatech needed to function. The problem was that all of this was connective tissue. It told a story, but it was a story with enough spaces in it that a skilled defense attorney, and Helios would have skilled defense attorneys, the kind who billed at rates that made Ray's fees look like a rounding error, could create reasonable doubt in each of those spaces until the whole narrative came apart. Cole needed Cross to produce something, not documents. Documents could be contested. Something that showed intention, in his own words, in a context he didn't know was being preserved. The bait had to look like an opportunity, and the opportunity had to be something that Cross, and through Cross, the people behind him, couldn't resist. Cole thought about what Ava had said. CoreSync is that foundation. He thought about what Ray had said. If you control the foundational algorithm for predictive AI, you control a lot more than just one product. And he thought about the fact that whoever was running this had been patient and careful for years, which meant they were not impulsive, which meant the bait had to feel inevitable rather than sudden. He called Ava on a Tuesday evening while Lily was doing homework at the kitchen table. "I need you to leak something," Cole said. Silence. "Controlled leak," he said. "Specific information, specific channel, specific audience." "What information?" "That CoreSync's final certification test is scheduled for the Novatech Innovation Summit, 2 weeks from Friday. That the test will be a live demonstration of the algorithm's full integration capacity, and that the complete architectural documentation will be transferred to a secure server that night for patent filing completion." Ava was quiet for a moment. "None of that is true." "I know. The summit is real, so you were already planning an event. The rest is constructed." "You want them to think there's a window," she said slowly, "a specific moment when everything they need is in one place and the timeline creates pressure." "Pressure makes people move faster than they'd planned," Cole said, "faster than their lawyers would recommend. And when people move faster than their lawyers recommend, they communicate through channels they'd normally avoid, and they make decisions that are harder to make invisible afterward." Another silence. "If this goes wrong," Ava said, "I'm not just facing an SEC investigation. I'm facing a situation where I've actively constructed a scenario designed to... They'll say I was running a sting operation without legal authority. They'll say..." "I know the risk," Cole said. "I'm not saying it's clean. I'm saying it's the option that moves at the speed we need." He paused. "You don't have to decide now." "Yes, I do," she said. "Because if I decide tomorrow, it's too late to set it up properly." Cole waited. "Who gets the leak?" she asked. "Daniel Cho," Cole said. The silence this time had a specific quality. "You said he was in contact with Vantage Global," Cole said. "That makes him the natural vector. If he's fully compromised, the information moves up the chain immediately. If he's only partially compromised, scared, as I said before, then the information still moves because he'll try to protect himself by giving them something." "And if you're wrong about him entirely?" Then the leak goes nowhere and we've lost nothing except 2 weeks. Lily looked up from her homework. Cole caught her eye and held up a finger. 1 minute. And she went back to her math worksheet with the expression of someone accommodating an adult under duress. Okay, Ava said. Okay, how do I do this naturally? Mention the summit timeline in a team meeting, not as a big announcement, as logistics, the kind of thing that comes up when you're going over event prep. Reference the server transfer as a security protocol matter. Let it be something Cho hears as part of the ordinary noise of planning. And then? And then we watch, Cole said. Ray has contacts at 2 financial monitoring services who owe him professional courtesy. If Helios or any of its vehicles start moving capital in ways that correspond to a 2-week timeline, we'll see the edges of it. And Cross? Cross is the one I need to move, Cole said. If the information gets to Helios and Helios decides to act at the summit, they'll need Cross there for the legal piece. He's been their inside man. They'll want him positioned. He'll be at the summit anyway, Ava said. He's on my board. I know, Cole said. That's why this works. The days between that conversation and the summit had the quality of a held breath. Not suspended, full of the ordinary texture of things, but held underneath, tight and careful, with the awareness of a deadline running parallel to everything else. Cole filed 3 briefs at the firm. He made Lily's lunch 6 mornings in a row. He worked 2 shifts at Callahan's, and on the second one, the man who'd sat at the end of the bar 3 weeks earlier came back. Different table this time, same quality of watchful non-watching. And Cole poured drinks and chatted with regulars and gave nothing away, which was a skill he'd developed over years of being in situations where giving things away cost more than he had. After the bar closed, he sat in the supply room with his phone and texted Ray. Second visit from the watcher. They're not done looking at me. Ray's response came back inside a minute. Expected. Means you're connected enough to their target to be worth monitoring. Keep boring them. Cole had been keeping boring them. He'd been meticulous about it. Same routes, same routines, nothing that looked like an operation in progress. The only non-routine element was a series of visits to a printing shop in Midtown where he'd made copies of everything he and Ray had assembled, which he'd distributed in 3 physical locations because he'd learned from the legal scandal 4 years ago that information that existed in only one place had a way of ceasing to exist. He'd also, on a Tuesday afternoon when Lily was at school and Mrs. Okafor was available, met with Ava at Ray's office. Their first time in the same room as Ray, which had a slightly tense first 20 minutes while Ray formed his opinion of Ava and Ava formed her opinion of Ray. And then something settled when Ava laid out her technical documentation and Ray recognized immediately that she knew exactly what she had and exactly how it had been targeted. CoreSync's architectural uniqueness is verifiable, Ava said. The development timeline is documented. Every iteration is time-stamped on a server that predates Vantage Global's formation by 2 years. If we can get a forensic accounting firm with SEC credibility to run the financial analysis alongside Ray's findings, the SEC complaint complicates that, Ray said. Under investigation, certain evidence pipelines become jurisdictionally tricky. There's a federal financial crimes attorney, Cole said. Sarah Osei. I've seen her work on 2 cases that came through my firm tangentially. She's not cheap and she's not easy to get time with, but if we can show her what we have, she'll know how to package it for the right federal channel. You mean around the SEC investigation? Ava said. Parallel to it, Cole said. If Helios and its operations constitute a broader pattern of financial crime, which they do, Ray's found evidence of at least 2 other companies targeted with similar methodology. Then this becomes something larger than the Novatech complaint. Larger than one SEC filing. And Sarah Osei has the relationships to put it in front of people who care about the larger picture. Ray tapped his notepad. The summit plan still depends on Cross showing his hand. Yes, Cole said. Everything else is the container. Cross is the content. Ava had been quiet for a moment in the way she got quiet when she was processing the architecture of something. You're building 2 simultaneous tracks, she said. The evidence package that goes to Osei as the structural case, and the summit as the trigger that gets Cross on record. One without the other isn't enough, Cole said. The package without Cross is a compelling story with gaps. Cross without the package is one man who can be sacrificed by Helios and replaced. We need both. Ava looked at him across Ray's desk. You've done this kind of thing before. No, Cole said honestly. I've read enough cases to understand how it works in theory. This is the first time I've built it. That's either reassuring or terrifying, Ray said. Both, Cole said. 8 days before the summit, things started moving the way Cole had calculated they would. And the way things moving made him deeply uncomfortable because it confirmed that the calculation had been right, which meant the stakes were real. Ray's contact flagged a capital movement in a Vantage Global subsidiary, not large enough to be obviously operational, but structured in a way that corresponded to resource pre-positioning. A private security contract was activated through a third-party service provider. 2 hotel suites in the building adjacent to the summit venue were booked under corporate names that Ray's forensic mapping connected to Helios's administrative structure. They were coming to the summit, coming in force, in the specific way that people came to a thing when they thought the thing was the moment they'd been building toward. Cole told Ava. How many? She asked. Unclear on principles. Security presence is at least 4, maybe 6. Cross will be there in his board capacity. There may be others I haven't identified. The summit has 500 attendees, Ava said, plus media. It's at the Meridian Conference Center. I know, which is why whatever Cross does, he'll do it quietly. He won't do anything publicly visible. He'll be managing legal facilitation, documentation, authorization, the technical execution of the IP transfer they're planning. The IP transfer they think is happening, Ava said. Right. The core sync architecture file that you're going to place in the Summit's secure server under a very legitimate-looking transfer protocol is going to be a specific document I want them to find. What document? A deliberately incomplete architectural specification, Cole said, professionally formatted, technically convincing to someone without deep AI knowledge, but missing the core integration variable that makes core sync actually work. It'll look like the real thing, right up until the moment someone tries to build on it and finds it doesn't function. Ava was quiet for a second. You want them to take it. I want the act of taking it documented, Cole said. The file has a tracking mechanism. Ray's contact built it. That records every access, every copy attempt, every transfer. The moment someone touches it with anything other than viewing credentials, we have a logged record of unauthorized access to proprietary IP. That's a federal offense independent of everything else. And Cross authorizes the access. Or facilitates it. Either way, his fingerprints are on it in a form that's very hard to explain away. Cole paused. Ava, I need you to understand what happens at the summit. It's going to be a public event. People you've worked with are going to be there. If this goes the way I think it goes, things are going to become visible that you can't take back. I know. Your company's security vulnerabilities are going to become public knowledge. The infiltration, Cole, she said. I know. Her voice was steady. I stopped trying to manage the optics of this 2 weeks ago. The only thing I'm trying to do now is get to the truth in a way people can see. Cole had the fleeting thought that most people in her position, the resources, the reputation, the brand carefully built over 10 years, would still be trying to manage the optics. That Ava had let that go was either wisdom or exhaustion or both. Okay, he said. There's one more thing. What? I need to be at the summit. A pause. You're a paralegal, she said. You're not on the guest list. I know, I need you to fix that. The Meridian Conference Center occupied the top 4 floors of a building in Midtown that had been designed to feel simultaneously like a corporate headquarters and a statement of intent. All glass and sharp angles, the kind of architecture that communicated ambition and impermanence at the same time. Cole had been in the building twice for other purposes and knew its layout reasonably well, which was the actual reason he'd pushed to be there rather than running things from outside. His credentials said Cole Bennett, Strategic Advisor, Novatech. Ava had made it real. He was, technically, on a consulting agreement for the duration of the event, which gave the credential legitimacy and gave him a professional reason to be anywhere in the venue. He wore a suit he'd borrowed from a colleague at the firm who was roughly his size. He felt like someone wearing a costume, which was an accurate description. Ray was not there. Ray was in his office with 2 monitors and access to the tracking system on the file server. They had a secure messaging channel open. Lily was with Mrs. Okafor. Cole had told Lily he had a work thing that might go late. Lily had looked at him with the sharp-eyed assessment she'd been deploying more frequently in the past 2 weeks, like she was constructing a theory she was waiting to verify, and said, "Okay, be careful, Dad." "That's usually my line," Cole said. "You say it because it's good advice," Lily said, "so I'm saying it back." He'd hugged her probably too long, and she'd let him without complaint, which told him she was more worried than she was saying, and that had sat in the back of his throat all morning. The summit opened at 9 with a keynote from Ava that Cole watched from the side of the hall. She was extraordinary at it. Not the performance version of extraordinary, not the polished TED Talk quality that could be mistaken for performance, but the kind that came from someone who actually believed in what she was saying and had the technical command to back it with specifics. The audience, investors, partners, press, industry peers, was attentive in the way audiences got when they sensed they were in the presence of something real rather than something produced. Cole wasn't watching the stage, though. He was watching the room. Martin Cross was seated in the 3rd row. Early 60s, silver-haired, the kind of unremarkable distinguished that took a certain sustained effort to maintain. He was watching Ava's keynote with the expression of someone watching a clock. Cole had spent 2 weeks studying Cross's public record, and he knew the face well enough now to read its changes. The slight tension around the jaw that appeared and disappeared as Ava referenced CoreSync's upcoming certification demonstration. The micro-adjustment of posture when she mentioned the server transfer protocol. The signal had landed. Cross had been briefed on the summit plan. He knew what tonight was supposed to be. Across the room, near the east entrance, Cole spotted 2 of the security detail that Ray had flagged. Large men in conservative suits with the specific quality of stillness that came from professional training. They weren't mingling, they were positioned. Cole checked his phone. Ray, file server showing normal access traffic. Nothing anomalous yet. Cross's known contact has checked in, confirmed on site. That was the unknown variable. Ray had identified a second Vantage Global operative who'd been traced to the event's attendee registration through a corporate affiliation, a man named Philip Crane, listed as a technology consultant for a firm that Ray's financial mapping had connected to Helios. Cole hadn't been able to get a face match before the event. He was looking for Crane now. The keynote ended to sustained applause. The room broke into the structured networking period that summit programs use to fill the time between sessions, and Cole moved through it carefully, greeting 2 people Ava had introduced him to the day before, accepting a coffee, not stopping anywhere long enough to look purposeful. He found Crane by process of elimination, mid-50s, standing near the registration desk with the careful non-expression of a man waiting for something, talking to no one. Cole walked past him at 8 feet and noted the earpiece. Very small, flesh-colored, the kind that said private security or communication coordination rather than hearing aid. Crane's eyes moved over the room in a specific pattern, professional sweep. Cole kept moving. He rounded the corner toward the secondary conference spaces and texted Ray. Crane identified, east registration area. He has comms. Ray. Understood. That means they have a coordinator outside the building. Watch Cross. Cole was watching Cross. The afternoon sessions passed with the specific tension of a thing that was wound and waiting. Cole attended 2 panel discussions he didn't hear and drank water he didn't taste and tracked Martin Cross through the architectural logic of the conference center, where he went during breaks, who he spoke to, the 2 moments where he stepped into a corridor with his phone and came back with the jaw tension gone, replaced by something that looked like resolution. At 4:15, Ava found Cole at the coffee station near the main hall entrance. He's been talking to Crane, she said quietly, not looking at him. She was holding a coffee cup and looking at the crowd and could have been talking to anyone. I know, Ray's tracking the communication pattern. Cole poured coffee he didn't want. The server goes live at 6. The demonstration session is at 6:30. That's when they'll move, say? between the server activation and the session start during the transition period when the venue will be most chaotic. There are 500 people here, Ava said, which is the point. If something goes wrong from their perspective, they have cover. If it goes right, they have witnesses to a very public Novatech summit that will look from the outside like nothing unusual happened. They're going to try to access the server directly, Ava said, not through Cross. Cross will authorize it, but the technical execution will be someone else. Who has that capability on their team? Crane might, or there's a third person I haven't identified. She paused. Cole. If they access the file and find it's not what they expected, they won't know immediately, Cole said. The file is architecturally convincing. It'll take time to realize the integration variable is missing. By then, his phone buzzed. Ray. He looked at the message. Movement in the Helios subsidiary account. Capital deployment to a legal execution vehicle, $2.3 million. That's the acquisition mechanism activating. They believe this is happening tonight. Cole showed the message to Ava without comment. She read it. Something in her face went very quiet. $2.3 million for the legal execution structure, she said. That's just the administrative piece. The acquisition value they're planning to extract is everything CoreSync is worth, Cole said. Ava's jaw tightened. Let's finish it, she said. Bam! At 5:50, Cole was in the secondary corridor behind the main technical hall when Martin Cross's phone call changed his plan entirely. He hadn't intended to be that close. He'd been moving toward the server room access point to confirm the positioning of Ray's tracking activation, taking the corridor route because the main hall had filled for the pre-demonstration networking, and Cross had stepped into the same corridor from a side door, phone already at his ear, not looking down the hall. Cole stopped, pressed against the wall in the stretch of corridor behind a mounted display case. Cross was 12 feet away, and what Cole heard in the next 90 seconds was better and worse than anything he'd prepared for. It's confirmed live, Cross said. His voice was low and unhurried, the voice of a man delivering expected information. Server's active. Crane has the access credentials from Reeves. A pause. I told you Marcus was reliable under pressure. He thinks he's protecting himself. Another pause, longer. The transfer window is 40 minutes. Crane moves at 6:15, I file the authorization redirect at 6:20, and by the time her demonstration goes live at 6:30, the file has already moved. A pause. The SEC complaint timeline holds regardless. Even if she figures out the file tonight, the regulatory process is already moving and we have 3 more months of runway before the investigation reaches. He stopped. Someone on the other end was talking. I understand the principal wants confirmation, Cross said. His voice had changed slightly. Tighter, the way voices changed when speaking to someone with more power. Tell him it's confirmed. The Sinclair situation concludes tonight. He hung up. Stood for a moment with his phone in his hand and then walked back through the side door. Cole stood very still. Marcus Reeves, Ava's CFO. The man she'd gone to the birthday party for. The man she'd defended, he may just be scared, and who had apparently, under sufficient pressure, provided Crane with the server access credentials. He was not proud of what he felt in that moment, which was not quite satisfaction at having been right, and not quite grief on Ava's behalf, but some composite of both that had no clean name. He called Ray. I have it on audio, Cole said, keeping his voice low. Cross on the phone to Helios principal. Complete operational confirmation. Reeves provided credentials. Crane moves at 6:15. Cross files the redirect at 6:20. Ray was quiet for 1 second. Cole. That was a private conversation. In a semi-public corridor at a corporate event I'm credentialed for. That's not going to be airtight. It doesn't need to be airtight on its own, Cole said. It needs to be enough to trigger a proper investigation that then finds everything else we've already built. It corroborates the financial evidence. It names the mechanism. He stopped. Ray, call OC. Now. Tell her what we have. She needs to be on the phone with the right federal contact before 6:15. Cole, that's 20 minutes. I know. Call her. He hung up, walked quickly back toward the main hall and called Ava. She answered on the second ring. Where are you? Corridor B, east side. Ava, Reeves gave them the credentials. A pause. Marcus? Yes, I'm sorry. He said it simply because it was the truth and because she deserved the truth without decoration. Cross confirmed it directly. Crane moves at 6:15. Another pause. When she spoke, her voice had the particular quality of someone who had felt the blow, absorbed it, and was already moving past it. Not because it didn't hurt, because she didn't have the time to let it stop her. Then we need to accelerate, she said. I know, Ray is calling OC, but there's something else I need you to do. Cole was walking as he talked, moving toward the main hall entrance. The demonstration at 6:30. I need you to change the format. What do you mean change it? You were going to demonstrate CoreSync's integration capacity using a controlled test environment, Cole said. I need you to demonstrate it live, connected to the actual output channels, real time, with the results visible to everyone in the room. Silence. If the authentication on the server has been compromised and Crane has accessed the file, even the decoy version, the tracking record will show the breach in real time. And if that breach record is displayed as part of the demonstration in front of 500 people in the press, it becomes something that can't be made to disappear. You want to expose the breach publicly during the demonstration. I want the first public record of what happened tonight to be visible to everyone simultaneously, Cole said. Not a press release. Not a post-event statement. Not something that can be managed or contested before it lands. I want it visible in that room, in that moment. Another silence. Longer. Cole? Ava said. Her voice was different now. Not the controlled professional register, not the crisis management tone. Something more raw underneath it. If this goes wrong, it might go wrong, he said. I'm not going to tell you it won't. I've been building this for 3 weeks and I've been careful, but I'm a paralegal from Inwood who reads too much, and the people on the other side have been doing this for years. She was quiet. But I think we have it, he said. I think we have enough. And I think tonight is the moment. And I think if we don't use it tonight, they will use tonight against you, and the 3 months of regulatory runway Cross mentioned will be enough to complete the acquisition and leave you with a legal battle you'd win eventually, maybe, and by then CoreSync is already deployed under their terms, and it doesn't matter. He heard her breathe. Can you change the demonstration format? He asked. Yes, she said. I can change it. I need 45 minutes. You have 30, she said. Go. Cole went. What happened in the next 30 minutes was not elegant and not clean and involved at various points. Cole running across the main conference hall in a borrowed suit, a call to Ray that lasted 4 minutes and covered the activation protocol for the tracking system, a text exchange with Ava's lead engineer, a woman named Priya Nair, whom Cole had met once at Ray's office and who he'd clocked as someone who understood exactly what was at stake about the live connection requirements, and a moment in a service stairwell where Cole leaned against the wall, hands on his knees, and made himself breathe for 20 seconds because his hands were shaking slightly, and shaking hands didn't help anything. He also, in the brief window of the stairwell stop, took out his phone and looked at a photo he kept in his camera roll. Lily, 6 months ago, on a beach in New Jersey where they'd driven for a weekend in August, standing ankle-deep in surf with the stuffed elephant held above her head to keep it dry, her face turned back toward the camera with an expression of absolute triumphant joy. He looked at it for 5 seconds. Then he put the phone away and went back up the stairs. At 6:12, Ray texted. Crane accessed the server at 6:09, file pulled, tracking record active and timestamped, notified OSE. She has a federal contact at Financial Crimes and he's standing by. We need the public record. Cole was at the edge of the main demonstration hall. Through the glass doors, he could see the audience filling in for the 6:30 session. Rows of seats and standing room, press credentials visible, cameras set up along the side walls. Ava was near the front, talking to Priya Nair. Priya was nodding with the focused calm of someone working a high-stakes technical problem. Martin Cross was seated in the second row. Crane, Cole noted, was not visible in the hall. He'd be outside or in a service area, passing the file through channels that would get it moving toward Helios's structure before anyone knew there was a problem. The problem, Cole thought, was that the file he'd sent would move beautifully through those channels, and the tracking record would follow it perfectly, and by the time Crane or Cross realized the integration variable was missing, the breadcrumb trail would be complete, time-stamped, and in the hands of people who knew what to do with it. At 6:25, Ava took the stage. Cole stood at the back of the hall with Ray's tracking interface open on his phone, watching two things simultaneously: Ava setting up the demonstration and the data feed that showed Crane's access timestamp, the file transfer initiation, and the growing chain of logged records that constituted the most clearly documented IP theft he'd ever seen. Ava began. She spoke about CoreSync the way she always spoke about it, with the direct precision of someone who had built a thing and understood it completely and didn't need to oversell what it actually was. The room was quiet in the way rooms got when they sensed something real was being shown to them. Then she said, "Tonight, I want to do something we haven't done before. I want to show you CoreSync running against live data, and I want to show you something else, something that happened in this building in the last hour that I think everyone in this room deserves to know about." The room changed. Cole watched Cross's posture change first, the shoulders drawing in, the hand that went to the phone in his jacket pocket and stopped. Ava brought up the tracking display on the demonstration screen behind her. Clean, clear, time-stamped. The server access, the file transfer, the IP authorization redirect that Cross had filed at 6:20, exactly as he'd said he would in that corridor. At 6:09 this evening, Ava said, her voice level and clear, a file was accessed from Novatech's Secure Summit server without authorization. The access credentials used were provided by someone inside this company. The file was transferred to an external vehicle connected to a corporate entity called Vantage Global Strategies, which is itself a subsidiary of a Cayman Islands holding structure called Helios Capital Group. She paused. Every action in this chain is documented, time-stamped, and has already been provided to federal financial crimes investigators. The room was completely silent for the duration of a breath. Then it wasn't. Cole watched it unfold the way you watch something you'd built in theory become real in practice, with the particular vertigo of understanding that the gap between those two states was much more consequential than any planning could fully capture. People were on their phones. Press credentials were moving toward the front. Martin Cross had stood up and was speaking to someone in a low, urgent voice, and a woman in a gray suit who Cole recognized from Ray's description as a Novatech in-house attorney was already moving toward Cross with an expression that suggested she'd been briefed. Cole's phone showed a text from Ray. OC's contact has issued a hold request on the Helios vehicle. The money's frozen. Cole, we got it. Cole looked at the screen, then he looked at Ava, who was still at the podium, answering the first question from the floor with the same level clarity she'd started with, while the room moved and buzzed around her like something released. He thought about a night 3 weeks ago, rain on a Manhattan road, a woman standing in the dark beside a broken car, holding herself very still. He thought about Lily's anglerfish. They live in the dark, and they make their own light. Martin Cross was being escorted out of the hall by two people who didn't look like event staff. Across the room, Cole saw one of the suited security men from Helios's detail moving toward an exit with the specific walk of someone revising their plans rapidly. He watched the man's shoulder disappear through the door, and then watched a second man appear from the other side of the door. A man Cole didn't know, in a jacket that said Federal Financial Crimes on the back, who had clearly been outside and was now inside. It was not a clean ending to the evening. The hall was in controlled chaos. There would be press statements and legal processes and months of investigation ahead. There would be the Marcus Reeves question to deal with, which would be complicated and painful and did not have an easy shape. There would be questions about Cole's own role, about the corridor recording, about the decoy file and the tracking mechanism, and all the other pieces of a plan that had been built by a paralegal who read too much, and a former federal investigator and a tech billionaire on milk crates in the back of a closed bar. None of it was clean. Cole's phone showed a text from Ava, back of the hall, now. He moved through the crowd to the back corridor, and she was there ahead of him, still in the presentation clothes, a controlled fire behind her eyes that he hadn't seen before, something that wasn't relief and wasn't triumph, but was the look of someone who had been compressed under enormous pressure for a very long time, and had just felt it begin to release. She looked at him. "The federal hold," she said. Ray confirmed it. Cross, being escorted. "The in-house attorney has him. Federal presence is on site. Cole paused. Crane is gone. He'll surface. There's a traceable record of his access, but he got out of the building. Ava nodded once. She was quiet for a moment in the way that wasn't an absence of things, but a presence of too many things at once. Marcus, she said. That's tomorrow's problem, Cole said, not unkindly. He has a daughter, she said. She didn't say it as an excuse or a defense, just as a fact that deserved acknowledgement. I know, Cole said. She looked at the wall for a moment, then at him. Your hands are shaking, she said. Cole looked down. They were. A fine tremor he hadn't been able to entirely suppress since the stairwell. Adrenaline, he said. I'll be fine. Cole, I'm fine. She reached over and put her hand briefly over his. Just for a second, not a gesture of romance, not something performed, but the simple acknowledgement of two people who'd been in a very difficult place together and had come through the specific wall they'd been trying to get through. Then she pulled her hand back and straightened. There are 200 journalists in that hall who are going to want statements, she said. I know. My legal team is going to have a lot of questions about how this was built. I know that too. Are you ready for that? Cole thought about it honestly. Ready was probably not the right word. He was a paralegal from Inwood in a borrowed suit with shaking hands and a daughter waiting at home with Mrs. Okafor, and the people he'd just helped expose had lawyers and resources and a long history of making problems disappear. But the federal hold was real. The tracking record was real. The documentation Ray had built was real, and Ava Sinclair was standing in this corridor, still on her feet. No, he said, but let's go anyway. And they went. The night after the summit didn't end at the summit. It ended, or didn't end more accurately, at 2:17 in the morning in a conference room on the 43rd floor of a building in Midtown, where Sarah Osei's team had set up a working space that looked like what it was, a legal operation running at emergency speed. 3 associates on laptops, a whiteboard covered in names and entity structures, cold coffee and paper cups that nobody was throwing away because throwing them away would require a trip to the trash can, and nobody had time for that. Cole was in a chair at the corner of the table that he'd claimed 2 hours earlier and hadn't left. Ava was on the phone. She'd been on the phone, with brief interruptions since they'd arrived. Ray was across from Cole, working 2 laptops with the focused economy of a man who understood that every hour of tonight mattered. Sarah Osei herself had been in and out of the room 3 times. She was in her mid-50s, precise in the way that came from decades of building cases that required precision, and she had the quality of someone who communicated importance through very few words rather than many. When she'd first reviewed Ray's documentation package, 40 minutes after they'd arrived, clearing a chair and sitting with the pages like someone reading something she'd been expecting, she'd said nothing for a long time. Then she'd looked at Cole. You built this as a paralegal, she said. It was not a compliment and not an accusation, just a calibration. Ray did the financial forensics, Cole said. I did the structural analysis. The corridor recording. Yes, that's going to be contested. I know, it's corroborative, not primary. The primary evidence is the tracking record and the financial documentation. She'd looked at him for another moment. Then she'd gone back to reading. And Cole had taken that as her version of acknowledgement, which he'd later learned was accurate. By midnight, the federal financial crimes contact, a man named Teller, compact and unhurried, who spoke in the precise language of someone accustomed to statements that would later be reviewed, had confirmed the hold on Helios's acquisition vehicle. The $2.3 million was frozen. A broader asset review was being initiated. By 1 in the morning, Martin Cross had been interviewed by federal agents at the offices of his own legal counsel, which was the specific location that suggested Cross's attorneys had been pre-positioned for exactly this scenario, which told Cole that Cross had known the risk he was carrying and had arranged his defenses accordingly, and that the defenses had not anticipated the tracking record or the public exposure. At 1:40, Teller had relayed through Osei that Cross had begun what was delicately described as a cooperative dialogue. But Cole, who had been in enough legal context to translate this, understood it to mean that Cross was giving up something to protect himself from something larger, which was both expected and somewhat satisfying in the specific way that watching a carefully constructed structure hold its load, was satisfying. At 2:17, Ava finished her call, sat down across from Cole, and looked at him with the expression of someone who had been running on adrenaline for so long that the adrenaline was starting to leave and revealing everything underneath it. "Helios," she said. Cole looked up from his notes. "Teller's team identified the principal," she said. Her voice was controlled. "The person at the top of the Helios structure. The person Cross has been working for." Cole waited. "His name is Victor Ashworth," she said. "He's 68 years old. He runs a private investment consortium called the Ashworth Group. He was one of the original architects of the AI infrastructure consolidation movement in the mid-2000s. He holds controlling positions in 4 of the largest data infrastructure companies in the United States." She paused. "He was also, before any of this, one of the people who turned down Novatech's Series B funding round." Cole absorbed that. "He passed on investing," he said slowly. "He passed on investing because he didn't think I could execute at the necessary scale," Ava said. "Or that's what his fund's rejection letter said. And then CoreSync became real, and the foundation he'd spent a decade building to control AI infrastructure became potentially obsolete, and—" She stopped, looked at the table. "He didn't try to buy me out. He didn't make an offer. He decided to take it." Cole was quiet for a moment. "Because he knew you wouldn't sell." "Because he knew I'd see exactly what he was," she said. "He was right about that, at least." The room around them continued its organized activity. Keyboards, low voices, the rustle of documents, and Cole watched Ava sit with this information, the specific weight of understanding that the person who'd targeted her had known her well enough to calculate that the only way to get what he wanted was to destroy her first. "He made a mistake," Cole said. She looked at him. "He spent years building a plan to take CoreSync from you because he thought you were the obstacle," Cole said. "He didn't account for the possibility that you'd find someone without a stake in your world who could see the shape of it clearly. Because in his world, everyone has a stake. Everyone has something to protect or something to gain. He couldn't model someone who was just looking at it." Ava studied him. "Is that what you were doing?" Cole thought about it honestly. "At first," he said. "By the end, I had a stake. But it was too late for them to use it against me, because they'd already moved." She was quiet for a moment. "Victor Ashworth has never been charged with anything," she said. "In 40 years of business, he has legal structures and defense teams and relationships in regulatory agencies." She wasn't saying it as defeat. She was saying it as a problem that required acknowledgement before it could be addressed. "He does," Cole said. "And right now his acquisition vehicle is frozen. His inside man is cooperating with federal investigators. His primary operational contact has been publicly identified and is being tracked, and the evidence trail Ray built connects Helios to at least 2 prior operations that Teller's team is now reviewing." He paused. "None of that makes Ashworth's lawyers go away, but it makes the position they're defending much harder than it was yesterday." "And the SEC complaint against me?" "Osei is filing for a stay pending the federal investigation," Cole said. "Given the circumstances, documented fabrication of evidence, insider manipulation, the connection to a broader pattern, she's confident the stay will be granted within 48 hours. Ava closed her eyes for 1 second. Just one, then opened them. "Marcus Reeves is going to lose his position," she said. "Probably. He's going to face his own legal exposure." "Yes." "His daughter is 8 years old." She said it the same way she'd said it the night before, not as a plea, not as an excuse, just as a human fact that deserved space in the accounting. "I know," Cole said. "That's separate from what he did. Both things are true." She nodded slowly, the specific nod of someone who understood a thing they didn't like. Ray looked up from his laptop across the table. "Cole? Crane." Cole looked at him. "Teller's people located him," Ray said. "He was at JFK. He didn't make his flight." Cole let out a breath he'd been holding since 6:30 the previous evening. "Good." He had a full copy of the decoy file and documentation of the transfer chain on an encrypted drive. They've seized it. Ray paused. "The encryption will take time, but the fact of the drive and the fact of the transfer, that's material." Cole nodded. turned back to Ava. Crane is in custody. Cross is cooperating. Ashworth's structure is under federal review. He listed it out not to perform confidence, but because laying it out sequentially was the way he processed things, and right now processing was what the situation required. There's still a lot of road between here and a resolution. Ashworth's attorneys will fight everything. The evidence package will be contested. The corridor recording will be... Cole, Ava said. He stopped. Thank you, she said. He looked at her. I know you said not to thank you yet, she said. I know there's road ahead. I'm not thanking you for a resolution. I'm thanking you for... She paused. For being the person who saw it clearly when I couldn't, and for not turning it into something it wasn't. Cole wasn't sure what he said to that. He thought he said something adequate. He was very tired, and the adrenaline that had been sustaining him since 5 p.m. was now definitively gone, and the borrowed suit had developed a wrinkle across the shoulder that was bothering him in the way small physical irritants bothered people who were exhausted. Go home, Osi said from the doorway. She was looking at Cole specifically, with the specific look of someone who understood the resource management of people under pressure. We have what we need for tonight. You'll be needed in 2 days when the stay filing comes back, not before. Cole looked at the clock. 2:24 a.m. I'll take a car, Ava said. You shouldn't be on the subway at this hour. I'm fine. Cole, take the car. He was too tired to argue, which was probably the point. He got home at 3. Mrs. Okafor, who had stayed over rather than leave Lily alone, Cole had texted her at midnight that it was running late, was asleep on the couch with a crossword on her chest, reading glasses still on. Cole stood in the living room doorway for a moment looking at this woman who had, over 4 years, become one of the quiet, load-bearing structures of his life, and felt the specific gratitude that had no adequate expression. He checked on Lily. She was awake, not pretending this time. Actually awake, sitting up in the dark with the elephant in her lap and the glow-in-the-dark stars throwing their pale light across the ceiling. She looked at him when he came in without the startled quality of someone woken unexpectedly. You've been up, he said. I woke up at 1 and couldn't go back, she said. Is it done? Cole sat on the edge of her bed. He was still in the borrowed suit, which he thought probably looked as tired as he felt. Most of it, he said. The important part. The lady from the news? He looked at her. What news? Mrs. Okafor's tablet was on the news channel at dinner, Lily said. There was a thing about a tech company, and I heard the name Novatech, and I know that's the company. She looked at him with those eyes. You helped her. Cole studied his 7-year-old. You knew what I was doing. I knew it was important, Lily said. I didn't know all the parts, but I knew she needed help, and you were helping. How much did you hear from the news? They said someone tried to steal something from her company, and it was stopped. She paused. They kept saying your name. Cole had not anticipated that. He had not, in any version of the planning, accounted for the fact that his name would be on the news while his 7-year-old was watching. Are you in trouble? Lily asked. She asked it directly, without the performance of casual, which told him she'd been sitting with the question for hours. No, he said. Not the kind you mean. There'll be legal stuff, questions, paperwork. But I didn't do anything wrong. Did she do anything wrong, the lady? No, he said. She didn't. Lily seemed to weigh this, then, is she okay? She's... Cole thought about Ava at 2 a.m, sitting across from him in that conference room, her hands wrapped around a cold cup of coffee, saying thank you with the specific sincerity of someone who didn't say it often. She's going to be okay. Lily seemed to accept this. She shifted the elephant in her lap. Dad? Yeah. You were scared. Cole looked at her. He thought about the stairwell, the shaking hands, the photograph on his phone. Yes, he said. I was. But you did it anyway. Yes. Lily nodded slowly. This seemed to satisfy something in her. Not a puzzle solved, but a theory confirmed. Okay, she said. Okay. Go to sleep, Dad. You look terrible. You've been up since 1 a.m. worrying. I wasn't worrying, she said. I was thinking, there's a difference. Cole leaned over and kissed the top of her head. She let him, which she was starting to do less frequently in the general direction of being 7 and independent. He filed that as something to not take for granted. Elephant has a name, Lily said as he stood. I know, Gerald. Gerald 2. Gerald 1 is the dog in the window on 204th. Right, Gerald 2. Gerald 2 was also up late thinking, she said, settling back with a gravity that was entirely genuine. He's very concerned about the situation. Cole stood in the doorway. Tell Gerald 2 I said everything's going to be all right. He says that remains to be seen, Lily said. Cole turned off the light and went to bed and was asleep in approximately 4 minutes. The week that followed was the specific kind of difficult that came after the acute phase. Not the sharp danger of the run-up to the summit, but the grinding, persistent work of consequence. Meetings with Osei's team. A statement to federal investigators that took 4 hours and 2 sessions. A deposition-style interview about the corridor recording that made Cole very glad he'd had Osei review his account in advance. The stay on the SEC complaint was granted in 31 hours. Osei called Cole with the news while he was at the firm, and Cole sat at his desk and let the information settle, and then went back to the brief he'd been drafting, because the brief still needed drafting and the world still required paralegal work regardless of what else was happening in it. Victor Ashworth's attorneys issued a public statement on the 3rd day. It was precisely worded, Cole read it twice, and it managed to simultaneously deny all allegations, suggest that Ashworth was a victim of a mischaracterization campaign, and hint at counter-litigation without actually committing to it. It was the statement of someone who knew the position was bad and was buying time, which was not the statement of someone confident they could make it go away. Ray sent Cole a text that morning. Ashworth's primary legal counsel resigned from the representation this morning, replaced by outside firm. That means his inside counsel knows what's actually there. Cole read that sitting at Callahan's during a quiet Tuesday afternoon when the bar had 3 people in it and Frank was doing inventory in the back. He read it twice, then set his phone on the bar and poured himself a glass of water and drank it. Edmund Harlow, the visible, almost hidden thing, the distraction Cole had correctly identified as one layer removed from the real mechanism, had retained his own counsel and had not issued any statement. His board position at Novatech had been suspended pending review. Cole thought about the man he'd watched get into a gray town car on a West Village morning, unhurried, carrying a leather portfolio, going to a Harvard Club breakfast. He'd known. He'd carried the knowledge for years and kept going to breakfasts. Cole didn't have much to feel about Harlow. That surprised him slightly. He thought he'd feel something clean, contempt or satisfaction, but what he actually felt was something more tired. The specific tiredness of having seen how corruption worked at the level where people were intelligent and deliberate about it, where they built rationales and lived inside them. Marcus Reeves had resigned from Novatech on the 4th day. His resignation letter, which leaked almost immediately and which Cole read in a financial publication's online edition, was the letter of a man who had done something he understood was wrong and had been trying to find language for what had led him there. It was not a good letter and not a convincing letter, and it was also, somehow, the most human thing in the entire documentation of what had happened. Cole read it once and didn't read it again. Ava called that afternoon. Not about strategy or logistics. Osei was handling most of the legal coordination by now, but just to talk, which was something they hadn't done before, and which arrived with a slight awkwardness before it didn't. "How are you doing?" she asked. "Fine," he said. Then, "Tired. Catching up on work I let slide." He paused. "You?" "Strange," she said. "The company is... There's a lot to fix. The board configuration, the executive team, the investor relationships that need rebuilding, and the press is..." She stopped. "The press has decided I'm a story, which I've been before but not in this direction." Cole had been following the press coverage in the way you couldn't help following coverage of something you'd been inside. It had the quality of things seen from the wrong angle, mostly accurate in the large outlines, frequently wrong in specific details, consistently interested in Ava's story in the way the press was interested in particular kinds of stories. Billionaire founder fights back against corporate espionage. The framing was not wrong. It also wasn't the whole thing. There's a piece in the Times, Ava said. It mentions you, calls you a paralegal turned corporate investigator. A pause that had something in it. I wanted to warn you before you saw it. I saw it, Cole said. This morning. Are you okay with it? Cole thought about that question. The Times piece was not unkind. It was also, like the rest of the coverage, interested in the narrative shape of the story in a way that smoothed out the actual texture. The milk crates in Callahan's back room, the kitchen table at midnight, the shaking hands in the stairwell. The piece had him heroic and decisive in ways that bore a general resemblance to what had happened but felt like a diagram of a person rather than the person. It's fine, he said. My firm's managing partner called me this morning to say I had a job as long as I wanted it, so if that's the worst consequence, I'll take it. Ava was quiet for a moment. Cole, I want to talk to you about something. Not today. You're clearly not done processing all of this, and neither am I. But when things settle, there's something I want to propose. Okay, he said. When things settle, she said again. Not now. Okay, he said, again. He didn't push it. He'd learned that Ava said things when she was ready to say them, and not before, and that this quality was not withholding but the opposite. When she said something, she meant it completely. 3 weeks after the summit, Cole was asked to testify before a federal grand jury convened to examine the Helios Capital Group's activities across multiple jurisdictions. Osei had prepared him. The preparation involved 4 sessions that were, in aggregate, more intellectually demanding than anything Cole had done in his legal career, because Osei understood that the value Cole brought to the testimony was not just what he knew, but how precisely he could render the process by which he'd come to know it. The defense would attack the construction of the evidence as much as the evidence itself, and Cole had to be able to account for every step in terms that were legally coherent without being legally coached. The specific tightrope of a lay witness who happened to understand the law. He testified for 3 hours. He was calm during it in the specific way that came from having told the truth so many times in preparation that the truth had a smooth, navigable shape. When the defense attorney for Helios's corporate counsel asked whether he had been operating as an unlicensed investigator, Cole said, I'm a paralegal with a background in legal analysis. I applied those skills to documents that were provided to me by the subject of the operation. I didn't conduct surveillance, execute searches, or act in any capacity that required licensure. When the same attorney asked whether his personal relationship with Ava Sinclair had influenced his analytical conclusions, Cole said, I formed analytical conclusions from documented evidence before any personal relationship developed. The sequence is in the record. When he walked out of the grand jury room after 3 hours, Ray was in the hallway. Ray had already testified the previous day. He looked at Cole in the specific way that one professional assessed another after a high-pressure performance. How'd it do? Ray asked. Fine, Cole said. Define fine. I said what I knew in the order I knew it and didn't embellish, Cole said. That's as fine as it gets. Ray nodded once. Ashworth's second legal team is already exploring a plea structure, he said. Teller told me yesterday. The evidence from the other 2 operations Ray's team identified. The ones that used the same Helios vehicle against different companies. That's what moved it. Ashworth can fight one company's claims. He can't fight a pattern. Cole stood in the hallway of the federal building with the specific exhaustion of someone who had been living in a state of sustained effort for 2 months and was only now beginning to understand how much of that effort he'd been running on rather than through. What happens to CoreSync? He asked. That's Ava's call, Ray said. But the hold on the federal investigation cleared the IP dispute. The patents are clean. The SEC complaint is being formally withdrawn. He paused. CoreSync gets to be what it was always going to be. She gets to deploy it on her terms. Cole took that in. Outside the building's glass doors, New York was doing its ordinary afternoon thing. Cabs, pedestrians, the particular quality of late November light that turned everything slightly gold and slightly gray at the same time. Go be a father, Ray said. Not unkindly. You've been a financial crimes investigator for long enough. I was never a financial crimes investigator, Cole said. Tell that to the Times, Ray said. He picked up Lily from school that afternoon, something he'd been doing less frequently in the past 2 months than he'd wanted to, and which he'd been carrying as a specific weight of guilt that parenting produced reliably, and that he'd learned not to let metastasize into something larger. The school pickup line had its ordinary geography: other parents, a few nannies, the particular social ecosystem of a public school in a mixed-income New York neighborhood that Cole had always found, in its own way, genuinely comforting. Lily came out with her backpack and the look she had at the end of school days, a slightly compressed version of herself, energy gathered for release. She found him in the line and walked over with the careful casualness of a child who was aware that running to your parent at pickup was not currently socially optimal. "How was it?" Cole asked. "Fine," she said. "We did the ecosystem presentations. I went second." "How'd it go?" "Good," she said. "Dominic did rainforest, and everyone thought that was going to be the best one, but I think deep ocean was actually more interesting because Miss Torres made a face when I talked about the bioluminescence part." "A good face or a concerned face?" "A good face," Lily said. "A that's more than I expected face." They walked toward home in the late November light. Cole had his hands in his jacket pockets, and Lily had her backpack shifted to one shoulder and was stepping carefully on a pattern of sidewalk cracks that she'd established some months ago and hadn't abandoned. "Dad," she said. "Yeah." "You seem different." "Different how?" She considered this for half a block. "Less thinking too loud face," she said. "More just walking face." Cole thought about that. "Is that better or worse?" "Better," she said. "The thinking face is good, but you need breaks." They turned the corner onto their block. The dog in the window, Gerald 1, was in his spot, which he always was at this hour, watching the street with the serene authority of a dog who had made peace with his situation. Lily waved at Gerald 1. Gerald 1 regarded her. "The lady called me," Lily said. Cole stopped walking, looked down at her. "She called the house number," Lily said, with the slightly defensive energy of someone who knows they're delivering news that will require explanation. "Mrs. Okafor answered. I was doing homework. She left a message. Mrs. Okafor wrote it on the notepad." Cole started walking again. "What did the message say?" "She said thank you," Lily said, "and she said she'd like to meet me sometime if that was okay. And she said—" Lily reached into the front pocket of her backpack and produced a folded piece of paper that she'd been carrying. She handed it to Cole. He unfolded it. Mrs. Okafor's handwriting, precise and unhurried. "Miss Sinclair called. Says to tell you specifically, the deep ocean is the most extreme place, and she thinks it's underrepresented. She says your father told her about the project, and she'd like to read it when it's finished." Cole read it twice. He looked at Lily, who was watching him with the expression of someone who had a theory about what was happening and was waiting to see whether the evidence confirmed it. "What did you tell Mrs. Okafor?" he asked. "I said to write it down," Lily said. "Obviously." Cole folded the note and put it in his jacket pocket. "Is she nice?" Lily asked, carefully casual. The specific calibrated casualness of a 7-year-old who was asking something they considered important and didn't want to look like they considered important. "Yes," Cole said. Yes. She's a real person, more real than she looks in the news. She looks serious in the news." "She is serious. She's also," Cole looked for the right word, "funny sometimes. Unexpectedly. Like she surprised herself." Lily took this in. "Gerald, too, would like to meet her." "I'll pass that along," Cole said. "Gerald, too, has opinions about people," Lily said. "He's a good judge of character." "He's a stuffed elephant." "He's a stuffed elephant with opinions," Lily said. "There's a difference." They went upstairs. Cole made pasta, which was the dinner he made when he needed the comfort of a thing with clear steps, water, salt, the particular patience of waiting for a boil. Lily set the table with the slightly performative competence she'd developed around household tasks, which meant she was happy. After dinner, Cole did the dishes, and Lily was at the kitchen table finishing homework, and the apartment had the specific quality of evenings that didn't require anything from either of them beyond being in the same space, which was the kind of evening Cole had learned to receive as the valuable thing it was, rather than the ordinary thing it looked like. His phone showed a text from Ava. Grand jury went well, according to Ose. Thank you for today. He typed back. You don't need to thank me for testifying. She replied after a minute. I know, I was thanking you for the last 2 months, all of it. He read that, set the phone on the counter. Lily looked up from her homework. Is it her? Yes. Tell her Gerald too says hello. I'm not telling her that. Tell her it's important, Lily said. Gerald too has a message and it's rude not to deliver it. Cole picked up his phone. He looked at it for a second. Then he typed, My daughter's stuffed elephant says hello. She says it's important and it would be rude not to pass it along. I'm choosing to respect that. The response took 30 seconds. Please tell Gerald too that I'm honored and tell your daughter that her deep ocean project sounds exceptional. Cole showed Lily the message without comment. Lily read it, sat with it for a moment, then nodded, once, with the specific gravity of someone confirming something they had already decided. Okay, she said, and went back to her homework. The formal charges against Victor Ashworth were filed on a Tuesday morning 6 weeks after the summit, and the news broke while Cole was at his desk at the firm pulling research on a securities dispute that had nothing to do with any of it. The managing partner, a methodical man named Davies, who expressed approval through the absence of criticism, stopped at Cole's office doorway and said, The Ashworth charges. I saw, Cole said. You're in the affidavit, Davies said. I know. Davies was quiet for a moment. You built a good case, he said. It came out like a fact rather than a compliment, which was, coming from Davies, the same thing. Cole thanked him. Davies left. Cole closed the news tab and went back to the securities research, because the work was still there and the work was still what he was. But he sat with it for a moment before going back. Sat with the specific feeling of a thing that had been set in motion coming through on the other side of a long, uncertain road. Ashworth's charges were substantial: securities fraud, conspiracy to commit IP theft, obstruction of federal investigations in connection with the other 2 companies Ray had identified. They were charges that reflected a pattern across years and across victims, and the weight of that pattern was visible in the language of the indictment, which Cole had read in full, and which was, in its own particular way, a kind of justice rendered on paper in the plainest possible terms. It wouldn't be quick. Ashworth's defense would take it as far as it could go. The law moved at its own pace regardless of urgency or damage, but the hold was real. The charges were real. And Victor Ashworth, 68 years old, the man who had spent years building a patient, careful operation to take something that wasn't his, was now looking at the specific confrontation of seeing everything he'd constructed turned inside out and read aloud in public. Cross had pleaded to reduce charges in exchange for cooperation. Crane had been formally charged and was negotiating. Harlow had retained counsel and was quiet in the way of men who understood they were watching to see what shape things took before deciding what to say. Marcus Reeves had resigned, consulted with federal prosecutors on his own exposure, and had, through his attorney, issued a statement that Cole read once and found, in its way, accurate. A man who had been frightened into a decision that compounded into something he couldn't recover from, and who understood clearly and too late what he had actually been part of. Cole filed his research, answered 2 emails, ate a sandwich at his desk that he actually tasted, which was new. At 4:30, he got a text from a number he didn't recognize. He almost didn't open it, and then opened it because it said, Cole, this is Daniel Cho. I know you know what I did. I've been trying to figure out how to say this, and I don't have a good version, so here it is. I was scared, and I made choices that I thought were protecting myself, and instead were contributing to something I didn't fully see until it was visible to everyone. I'm not asking for anything. I wanted to say it to the person who found it. Cole read this twice, thought about it for a long time, then typed back, I hear you. What you do with it from here is what matters. He didn't know if that was the right thing to say. He thought it was honest, which was the best he could do. The day Ava called to say the SEC complaint had been formally and officially closed, not stayed, not paused, but closed, the file wiped clean. It was a Thursday in December, and Cole was walking home from a late shift at Callahan's, and the city was doing the December thing where the cold had a clarity to it that was almost pleasant as long as you were moving. He stopped under a streetlight when she called, because walking and receiving news that you'd been carrying the weight of for months was not something you did simultaneously. "Officially closed," she said. "Okay," he said. "That's all you've got?" "I'm standing on a street corner in the cold," he said. "Give me a minute." She laughed. The real one, short, genuine, slightly surprised by itself. He'd heard it a handful of times now, and each time had the same quality of something unexpected that he'd stopped trying to analyze. "I want to have that conversation," she said. "The one I said I wanted to have when things settled. They've settled enough. Can you come to the office tomorrow?" "Yes," he said. "Bring Lily if you want. I have a conference room that has a view of the harbor. I think she'd like it." Cole was quiet for a moment. "She sent Gerald 2's regards last week," he said. "Through me, with some ceremony." "I know, I texted her about the Deep Ocean project." "She's been doing research on bioluminescent organisms since then," Cole said. "You've created a situation." "Good," Ava said. "There was something warm in it that wasn't performed. Tomorrow, 10 o'clock. 10 o'clock, he said. He stood under the streetlight for a moment after he hung up. December New York at 11 at night had a specific quality. The cold and the lights and the specific music of a city that never completely stopped, always running somewhere underneath everything. A persistent hum that you stopped hearing until you stopped and listened. Cole listened to it for a moment. Then he went home to his daughter and his borrowed life that didn't feel borrowed anymore, and the kitchen table where a lot of things had been built in the dark and the early morning, and he went to sleep without running the numbers on anything, which was, for the first time in months, how it felt. The Novatech offices occupied 3 floors of a building in Tribeca that Ava had chosen 7 years ago because the rent was manageable and the light was good, and she'd never moved even when the company could easily afford something more declarative, which told Cole something about her that no profile or interview ever had. He brought Lily. He'd debated it for approximately 12 hours, the entire night before and the subway ride down. And then Lily had come to breakfast in her good sweater, the dark green one she wore for things she considered significant, without Cole saying anything about what she should wear, and that had settled it. They arrived at 10 exactly. The receptionist, a young man who clearly recognized Cole's name from the clearance list, brought them to a conference room on the top floor with windows that looked south over lower Manhattan toward the harbor. It was a gray December morning, and the water was the color of old pewter, and Lily went straight to the window without being asked and stood there with her hands pressed flat against the glass, like someone completing a circuit. "You can see all the way to the bridge," she said. "Which one?" Cole asked. "Both," she said. Ava came in 2 minutes later. She was in a dark sweater and jeans, the office version of her, not the summit version, not the magazine version. And she stopped in the doorway for a moment when she saw Lily at the window, and something happened in her face that was soft and quick before she moved into the room. "You must be Lily," she said. Lily turned from the window. She looked at Ava with the direct assessment she applied to things she considered important, which Cole recognized as the face that preceded either approval or measured skepticism. She used it on teachers, on new episodes of shows she cared about, on vegetables presented in new configurations. "You know about the Deep Ocean project," Lily said. "I do," Ava said. "Your dad said you've been doing extra research since we talked about bioluminescence." "Anglerfish use bioluminescence as a trap," Lily said, "but comb jellies use it for something different. They use it just to be seen. Same mechanism, different purpose." Ava looked at her for a second, then to Cole. "She's remarkable." "I'm standing here," Lily said, not rudely, just as a fact. "You're right," Ava said. "You are. And yes, comb jellies are a perfect example of how the same biological tool can serve completely opposite functions depending on the organism. You should put that in the project." Lily looked at Ava with the specific expression of someone whose theory had been confirmed. "Okay," she said, with the resolution of a deal struck. Then she turned back to the window with the tranquility of someone who had gotten what they came for. Cole looked at Ava. She looked back at him. There was something in the room between them that had been building across 2 months of phone calls and conference rooms and borrowed suits and cold coffee, something that neither of them had named because naming it required certainty, and certainty required stillness, and they hadn't had stillness until very recently. "Sit down," Ava said. "Both of you. I'll get coffee." "She doesn't drink coffee," Cole said. "I know. I had someone get hot chocolate." Lily turned from the window. "With the little marshmallows or without?" Ava looked momentarily caught. "I'll check." "Without is also fine," Lily said generously. "I'm not unreasonable." The conversation, the one Ava had said she wanted to have when things settled, lasted the better part of the morning, and it was not the conversation Cole had expected, which was partly because he'd expected a conversation about a job offer, and it was that, but not only that, and partly because Lily was present for the first hour of it, and Lily's presence changed the quality of things in a way Cole had long since stopped being surprised by. The foundation idea was real, not a press release concept or a reputational rehabilitation play. Real, in the specific way that things were real when they'd been thought through to operational detail. Ava had been planning it quietly for longer than the crisis had been running. "The operations that Helios used against Novatech," Ava said, "the financial manipulation, the manufactured evidence, the insider infiltration, they used the same playbook on 2 other companies before mine, smaller companies, companies that didn't have the resources to fight it. Both of them collapsed." She had papers on the table, sets, not a presentation, just papers, the working version of an idea. One was a medical diagnostics startup. The other was a logistics optimization firm. Both had genuinely transformative technology. Both were destroyed before they could deploy it. And in both cases, the people who built the companies were left with nothing except legal debt and a public narrative that had been constructed to look like their own failure. Cole had known about the 2 prior operations from Ray's research. He hadn't known the human detail of what had happened to the founders. "The Foundation's purpose," Ava continued, "is to provide legal and financial defense infrastructure to small technology companies and independent innovators who are being targeted by this kind of operation. Not after the fact, before the fact, and during it. Because the advantage that Helios and operations like it have is that they're patient, they're resourced, and their targets are usually isolated. The founders of those 2 companies didn't have a Ray. They didn't have an Osei. They definitely didn't have..." She paused. Someone who looked at the documents and saw the shape of it. Cole sat with that for a moment. "You want me to run it," he said. "I want you to build it and run it," she said. "The legal protection side. I have engineers and financial analysts. What I don't have is someone who understands how these operations work from the inside out and can recognize them early enough to matter." She looked at him directly. "You spent 2 months inside one. You understand the architecture. You know what the early signals look like. And you have, Cole, you have the specific quality of being someone that people trust. Not because you perform trustworthiness, because you actually are." Cole looked at his hands on the table where Lily had left a small smear of hot chocolate fingerprints that neither of them had addressed. "I'm a paralegal," he said. "Who just helped build the case that put Victor Ashworth in front of a federal grand jury," Ava said. "Who identified the mechanism of a multi-year corporate operation that professional investigators had missed. I'm not asking you to be a lawyer, Cole. I'm asking you to be what you are." "Which is what?" "Someone who notices things," she said simply. "Someone who reads everything and remembers it and can see the shape of a thing when other people are too close to it or too invested in it to see clearly." Lily, who had been very convincingly absorbed in the harbor view for the past 10 minutes, said from the window, "Say yes." Cole looked at his daughter. "It's a good idea," she said, still looking at the water. "People who build things shouldn't have them taken away." Cole thought about the founders of the 2 companies Ava had described, people who had built something real and had been systematically dismantled by patient, resourced opposition, and who had not had what Ava had, which was not money or lawyers, but a person who looked without agenda and saw clearly. He thought about his kitchen table at midnight, the legal pad, the yellow pages covered in handwriting like he was angry at the paper, the specific combination of exhaustion and clarity that came from working a problem through to the other side. He looked at Ava. What does the legal structure look like? He said. And they spent 2 hours working through it, and Lily fell asleep in a conference room chair with her cheek against the armrest somewhere around the 90-minute mark, which Cole noted without comment, and which Ava also noted without comment, and they both lowered their voices without discussing it. The foundation was called the Meridian Trust. Not after the car. Ava pointed out that the name predated the vehicle, okay? But after the Meridian line, the idea of a line that oriented things, that gave position meaning. Cole thought the name was slightly abstract but understood it, which was enough. He gave his notice at the firm on a Monday in January. Davies received it with the specific expression of someone who had seen it coming and had been preparing a version of acceptance. He shook Cole's hand. "You were wasted on briefs," Davies said. "I wasn't wasted," Cole said. "I learned everything I needed." "That's the right way to look at it," Davies said. Cole worked his last 2 weeks, finished everything he'd started, left his desk clean. He worked his last Callahan shift on a Friday night, and Frank, who was not a demonstrative man, poured 2 shots of good whiskey at closing time, and they drank them without toasting to anything, which was Frank's version of sentiment, and which Cole received as such. The transition had the texture of things that were genuinely new, which is to say, it didn't feel clean or fully formed. It felt uncertain in ways that Cole was learning to distinguish from dangerous uncertainty, which this wasn't. This was the uncertainty of standing at the edge of something he'd built himself, which was different from the uncertainty of something being built around him without his knowledge. He and Ava worked in proximity in those early months in the way that people who had been through something together worked, with the ease that came from shared history and the specific friction that came from 2 people who both had strong opinions about how things should be done, and who were sometimes right about different parts of the same question. They argued, occasionally, not catastrophically. Ava had a tendency to move faster than the structural foundation warranted, and Cole had a tendency to want the structure fully established before moving at all. And the productive middle ground between those tendencies required negotiation that was sometimes sharp. Once in March, they had a disagreement about the timeline for taking on the foundation's first case, a biotech startup in Austin that had brought their situation to the foundation's attention and whose circumstances were urgent. And the disagreement lasted for 2 days and involved a phone call at 11 at night that started as professional and became personal in the way that things did when the professional and personal had stopped being clearly separate. "You're not wrong about the timeline being fast," Cole said. "I'm saying fast and necessary are not the same thing." "The company loses its patent window in 6 weeks, Ava said. 6 weeks is not a timeline problem. It's a timeline reality. And if we go in without the structural support ready and we can't hold it, we've given them a case study in how to beat us," Cole said. "That's worse than being late." Silence. "You're right that it's a risk," she said finally. "You're right that 6 weeks is real," he said. Another silence, the kind that was working rather than stuck. "We split it," she said. "Legal defense framework goes in immediately with what we have. Financial monitoring piece waits 2 weeks until Ray's contact is fully integrated." "Agreed," Cole said. "Was that so hard?" she said. "Yes," he said honestly, and she laughed, and it was the real one, and the argument was over. The Austin case resolved in 4 months. The patent held. The company's CEO, a woman in her early 30s who reminded Cole in certain specific ways of watching Ava run a room, sent the foundation a letter that was not formal and not processed through legal, and which Ava read once and then put in a drawer rather than a file, which Cole understood to mean it had landed somewhere important. Spring came the way it came in New York, not gradually but in sudden decisive days between the gray, as if the city had been holding something back and released it all at once. Cole's apartment in Inwood got the afternoon light that it got in April, and Lily started spending afternoons on the fire escape with her schoolwork because she'd decided that doing homework outside counted as being outside, which Cole allowed on the grounds that the logic was not entirely wrong. He and Ava had not named what was between them for a long time, which was partly because neither of them were people who named things prematurely, and partly because the working relationship and the personal relationship had developed in such close proximity that pulling them apart to examine them separately would have been artificial. It became clear in small ways before it became explicit. The Tuesday night dinners that had started as working sessions and had stopped being primarily working sessions. The specific way Ava talked to Lily, not performing ease with children, which Cole could always identify, and which Lily identified faster than he did, but actual genuine interest in what Lily was thinking, which produced in Lily a reciprocal interest that was not small in its weight, because Lily's approval was not free. Lily had once, in Cole's hearing, explained to Ava the full taxonomic classification of the anglerfish, and Ava had listened with complete attention and asked 2 follow-up questions that were specific enough that Lily had looked at her with the expression she reserved for people who were actually listening rather than performing listening. After that, the Gerald 2 updates became a direct communication between Lily and Ava that occasionally bypassed Cole entirely, which he found more moving than he had words for. The first time Cole and Ava were alone together in a context that was unambiguously not work, a Saturday in late April when they'd both ended up at a farmer's market in the West Village for no coordinated reason and had stood in the same line for coffee before either of them spoke. He'd looked at her in the ordinary morning light, no summit, no crisis, no borrowed suit or conference room or legal pad, just a line at a coffee cart in the spring, and understood that the thing he'd been aware of since a rainy October night had not been something he'd constructed. It was just true. "You're making the thinking face," she said without looking at him. "You know that face now." "Lily described it to me in detail," she said. "She said it looks like you're arguing with yourself and winning." Cole took his coffee. "What did she say about her version of it?" "She said she doesn't have a thinking face," Ava said. "She said she has a knowing face. Different." "She's not wrong," Cole said. They walked through the market, the spring morning doing its specific alchemy with everything it touched, neither of them performing anything. 2 people who had been through a difficult thing together and had come out knowing each other in a way that skipped the usual sequence. "I'm not good at this," Ava said at one point, not as a warning, as information. "I haven't been, historically. I work too much and I get absorbed in problems and I forget to be present in the way that other people need and "Ava," Cole said. "I'm telling you the real version," she said, "not the magazine version." "I know," he said. "I've been watching the real version for 7 months." She looked at him. "You're also funny and precise and you actually listen and you care about things beyond your own interest," Cole said. "I've seen all of that too. People are more than their failure modes." She was quiet for a moment. "You're not perfect either," she said finally. "I know." "You're stubborn about the timeline thing," she said, "and you underestimate yourself consistently, which is its own kind of problem because it makes other people underestimate you initially, and then they have to recalibrate, and the recalibration costs time." "Accurate," Cole said. "And you carry guilt about Lily in a way that she doesn't need you to carry," Ava said. "She's extraordinary, and she's fine, and she knows you love her. The carrying doesn't add anything." Cole walked for a moment with that. It was not a comfortable thing to hear. It was also precisely true in a way that required someone who had watched him carefully enough to see it. "Okay," he said. "Okay," she said. They had a second coffee at a bench in the market and talked about nothing significant for an hour, which was something Cole had not done in longer than he could measure. Just talked, without agenda, without the problem underneath it. And it felt like something his life had been waiting to have the space for. So, Victor Ashworth pleaded guilty in June. Not to everything. The legal process had that particular grinding quality that Cole had predicted, with defense motions and procedural delays, and the specific exhaustion of watching a man with enormous resources use those resources to soften the shape of his accountability. But the core charges held: securities fraud, conspiracy to commit IP theft, obstruction. The plea agreement, which Osei called Cole to read out the key terms over the phone, reflected a sentencing recommendation of 8 to 12 years and the forfeiture of significant assets. "The other 2 companies," Cole said. "Both are named in the agreement as prior operations," Osei said. "Both founders are included in the victim impact framework. The restitution structure covers them." Cole sat with that for a moment. The founders of the medical diagnostics startup and the logistics firm, people he'd never met, names he'd learned from documents, were being acknowledged in the accounting of what had been done. It wasn't their companies back, it wasn't the years, but it was their names in the record, which was something. "Cross?" he asked. 18 months, suspended, substantial cooperation credit. "He'll serve probation." Osei's tone was neutral on that, which Cole understood to mean she had opinions she was professionally managing. And Edmund Harlow? Civil fraud settlement. No criminal charges. The DA's office determined the evidence didn't support criminal intent beyond reasonable doubt, which, she stopped, which is a legal conclusion I respect even when I don't find it entirely satisfying. Cole understood that distinction. He'd sat with Harlow's case more than the others, in the specific way you sat with cases that didn't resolve cleanly. Harlow was the man who'd believed in Ava early, and then believed in himself more. The man who'd carried his betrayal inside a relationship that had looked, from the outside, like mentorship and support. The man who had gone to Harvard Club breakfasts while the operation he'd enabled ran its course. No criminal charges. It was the legal outcome. It was not exactly the human one. Cole called Ava after the Osei call. "I know," she said. She'd heard already. "I'm okay." "About Harlow." A pause. "About all of it." Her voice had the quality of someone telling the truth about something complicated. "I keep trying to feel more resolved than I do, like there's supposed to be a moment where it all lands as finished and I feel—" She stopped. "But it just is what it is. Ashworth is going to prison. CoreSync is deployed. The companies we've helped are still standing. And Harlow is going to live with what he did inside himself, which is maybe its own kind of sentence." "Maybe," Cole said. "The thing I've actually been thinking about," she said, "is the two founders. The other ones. I looked them up when Ray first found the prior operations, and I've been thinking about them since." She paused. "I want to meet them. Not for the foundation, but personally. I want to look them in the eye and tell them I know what was done." Cole was quiet for a moment. "I think you should," he said. "Will you come?" "Yes," he said. They went the following month. A trip to Chicago for the diagnostics founder, a woman named Renata Kowalski, who had spent 3 years after her company's collapse doing contract coding work to pay off the legal debt the operation had generated. She was quiet during the meeting, and sharp in a way that had been compressed rather than diminished. And when Ava talked, she listened with the specific attention of someone who had been waiting for an acknowledgement without quite knowing she was waiting. When they left, Renata had agreed to an advisory role with the Meridian Trust. She had also, when saying goodbye, looked at Cole directly and said, "You found it, the shape of it. Thank you." Cole had not known how to receive that. He'd said something simple, "You built something worth finding," and left it there, because the truth was that gratitude for having done a right thing arrived with a weight he didn't always know how to carry, and carrying it with grace required practice he was still accumulating. In the fall, Lily started 3rd grade and developed a new obsession with plate tectonics, which Cole received with the specific resilience of a parent who had already navigated hagfish, anglerfish, comb jellies, and the full taxonomic history of the bioluminescent deep. The deep ocean phase had not ended. It had simply expanded to include the tectonic events that shaped the ocean floor, which Lily explained to Cole one evening with a level of geological detail that he was reasonably certain exceeded her teacher's current knowledge. Ava came to dinner on a Thursday night in October. The anniversary, neither of them said aloud, but both of them knew, of a rainy October night on a Manhattan service road, and brought a book about deep-sea volcanic vents that Lily received with the expression of someone who had been given exactly the right thing and was slightly suspicious of how right it was. They ate dinner at Cole's kitchen table, the same table where he'd built the case in the dark, the same table where he'd written Edmund Harlow's name at the top of a new page, and the table that had been a desk and a research station and a place of sustained effort was, that night, just a table where people ate pasta and talked about plate tectonics and the kind of ordinary and specific things that accumulated into a life. After dinner, Lily showed Ava her deep ocean poster, which had grown from the school project into something that occupied a significant portion of the bedroom wall, updated regularly with new information and printed photographs, and a classification system that Lily had devised herself. Ava studied it with real attention, asking questions, and Lily answered with the authority of an 8-year-old who had done the reading, and Cole stood in the doorway watching the two of them in the glow-in-the-dark starlight and felt something that had no clean name, not contentment exactly, because contentment was too passive for what it was, but something in the neighborhood of fullness, The sensation of a space in your life that you hadn't fully known was empty until you saw it occupied. He went to the kitchen and did the dishes, because someone had to, and because doing the dishes was the kind of ordinary task that grounded things back to their actual texture rather than the elevated version of them. Ava found him at the sink. "She's asleep," she said. "Almost. She's in the resting with eyes closed phase. She inherited that from me," Cole said. "I'm sorry." Ava leaned against the counter. The kitchen was small in the way of Inwood kitchens, and the proximity was comfortable in the way it had become comfortable over a year of proximity. "I want to say something," she said. Cole kept his hands in the dishwater but listened. "I've been thinking about the night on the road," she said. "I've thought about it a lot over the past year, from different angles, and the thing I keep coming back to is that I didn't stop for you. You stopped for me. You made a decision that had nothing in it, no calculation, no opportunity, nothing except someone standing in the rain." She paused. "The whole architecture of what happened after that, everything we built, everything that came out, started with you doing something that had no return. And I think about that a lot, about what kind of person does that without thinking." Cole was quiet. "The kind that was raised to," he said finally, "and the kind that had enough of the calculation beaten out of him by circumstances that he stopped doing it automatically." "Maybe," she said, "or maybe it's just who you are." He turned off the water, dried his hands on the dish towel, turned around. "I'm not a simple person," he said. "I have the guilt you identified, and the stubbornness, and the years of carrying things in ways that weren't always useful. I'm not the uncomplicated version." "I know," she said. "I don't want the uncomplicated version. I've met the uncomplicated versions, and they're boring and they don't see things." Cole looked at her in the small kitchen light. Ava Sinclair, 31 years old, the person who had been standing in the rain with her car broken and her world coming apart, and had gotten into his beat-up Civic without flinching, who had bitten her nails down to nothing under the pressure of a 2-year operation, who had stood at a podium in front of 500 people and named what had been done without her voice shaking, not because she wasn't afraid, but because she'd decided that the fear was not the most important thing in the room, who had learned, over a year of watching, that Lily's deep ocean obsession was worth genuine engagement rather than polite interest, who had said, "I'm not good at this" on a spring morning at a farmer's market because she was more honest about her own limitations than most people with far less to protect. Not perfect. Not the magazine version. Real, which was better. "Okay," he said. "Okay, what?" "Okay, I know what I want," he said. "I've known for a while. I was waiting to be sure it was what you wanted." "It is," she said, simply. "We're going to disagree about timelines," he said. "Constantly," she agreed. "And I'm going to be stubborn about infrastructure. And I'm going to move faster than you're comfortable with. And Lily is going to have opinions about all of it," Cole said. "Lily already has opinions about all of it," Ava said. "I asked Gerald too last week. He's cautiously optimistic." Cole looked at her. "You asked the stuffed elephant." Via text to Lily, who consulted him and reported back. "He has concerns about the timeline, but he's willing to wait and see." She paused. "He said he's a good judge of character, and his judgment is positive." Cole put the dish towel down. "Then I think we should trust Gerald too," he said. And he kissed her in his small Inwood kitchen on an October Thursday that was the anniversary of a rainy road and a broken car and a decision made without calculation. And it was not cinematic, and it was not clean. She bumped the dish rack, and he was still in his work shirt with the sleeves rolled up, and neither of them managed to make it graceful. And it was entirely real, which was all it needed to be. Well, people talk about turning points as though they are singular and clear, as though the moment a life changes can be seen in isolation from everything that came before and after it. Cole had spent a year understanding that this was not how it worked. The turning point was not the rainy road, or the coffee shop, or the summit demonstration, or the grand jury testimony, or a Thursday kitchen in October. It was the accumulation of all of them, and it was also none of them individually, because each step had only been possible because of the one before it, and had only mattered because of the one after. You could spend your whole life calculating what was worth the risk, running the math on outcomes, protecting the things you'd built with such careful effort from anything that might destabilize them. Cole had done that. He'd done it for years, after the legal scandal had taught him that the world could reach in and take things without warning, and the protection he'd built was real, and it was necessary, and it had kept him and Lily standing when they needed to stand. But protection had a ceiling. At some point, you were not protecting something. You were just containing it, holding it smaller than it was because small things didn't have as far to fall. The thing he hadn't been able to see from inside the careful accounting was that the people worth trusting were not the ones who never asked anything of you. They were the ones who asked something real, who saw you clearly and said, "I need what you actually are, not the safe version of it," and who, when you gave it, did not use it to take something. Ava had seen him. A woman standing in the rain had looked at the person who stopped and recognized something she could trust, and 3 weeks later had called him from an unknown number and told him the truth about what was happening to her. And he had looked at her, at the bitten nails and the controlled voice and the weight she was carrying, and recognized something that his careful math had never made room for before. That was not a fairy tale. They both knew it wasn't a fairy tale. The work ahead of them, at the foundation, at home, in the specific negotiation of two strong-willed people building something together, was not going to be easy or smooth. There would be the timeline disagreements and the infrastructure arguments and the days when the accumulated weight of what Ava had been through made her close herself off, and the days when Cole's old guilt and old caution made him slow when she needed him to be fast. There would be, in the specific way of things that were worth having, difficulty. But difficulty and value were not opposites. Cole had learned that at a kitchen table at midnight, building a case in the dark with cold tea and a legal pad. The hard version of a thing was frequently the real version. 2 years later, the Meridian Trust had supported 14 companies across 9 states. 6 cases had resulted in criminal referrals to federal investigators. 3 operations similar to the Helios structure had been identified and interrupted before they reached the stage that Novatech had reached. Renata Kowalski had become the Foundation's Director of Financial Monitoring and had rebuilt, from the advisory position, something that was not her original company, but was new and was hers and was operating. CoreSync had completed its second major deployment cycle. The use cases Ava had described over soup in a Tribeca restaurant, finance, logistics, medical diagnostics, were real and growing. The algorithm that someone had spent years trying to take was doing what it had been built to do, under the terms its builder had intended. Victor Ashworth was in a federal facility in Pennsylvania. Martin Cross was completing his probation in Connecticut. Edmund Harlow had retired from all board positions and lived, by all accounts, very quietly, which was not justice in any formal sense, and was also, in the specific way of things that landed where they landed rather than where you wanted them to, something. Daniel Cho had left the tech industry. He was teaching computer science at a high school in Queens. Cole knew this because Cho had sent a second text, 6 months after the first one, that said only, "I think I found the right thing." Cole had written back, "Good," and meant it. Marcus Reeves had pleaded to reduce charges and received a suspended sentence contingent on cooperation and community service. His daughter was in 3rd grade, same as Lily. Cole did not know more than that, and had decided that knowing more than that was not something he needed to do. Ray Okonkwo had 2 new cases. He sent Cole documents occasionally with commentary that was dry and precise, and that Cole always read immediately because Ray's precision never wasted time. They had dinner every 2 months, the 3 of them, Cole, Ava, Ray, and argued about methodology and drank good wine and sometimes agreed on things, which felt like the right frequency for people who worked closely enough to disagree. Mrs. Okafor had, over the course of a year and a half, gently reduced her availability for Lily's after-school care in the specific way of someone communicating that it was needed less rather than that she was offering less. Cole understood. He thanked her in the way you thanked someone who had been a load-bearing wall in your life during a long structural renovation. Imperfectly, repeatedly, never quite adequately. Lily Bennett was 8.5 years old and had opinions about plate tectonics, deep-sea biology, the proper way to classify bioluminescent organisms, and the character and judgment of most people she encountered. She had, over the course of a year and a half of Thursday dinners and weekend visits and one foundation event she'd attended and declared interesting but too many speeches, developed a relationship with Ava that Cole did not try to define or accelerate because it was building itself on its own terms, which was how the things worth having built. She had recently begun calling Ava by name without the slight formality that had been there at the beginning. Just Ava, directly, in the middle of sentences about ecosystems and the tectonic movements of ocean floors. Ava received this without comment, which was the right way to receive it, as a natural thing, which it was. Gerald, too, had been formally upgraded by Lily from cautiously optimistic to supportive. This had been communicated via text and received by Ava with the solemnity it deserved. On a Sunday in November, the second November since the rain on the service road, the first since the kitchen in October, Cole and Ava and Lily went to the Natural History Museum. Not for the deep ocean exhibit, though they went there too, and Lily stood in front of the bioluminescence display for 11 minutes while the docent looked mildly startled by the precision of her questions. They went because it was a Sunday and they had nowhere specific to be, and the museum was open. Lily ran slightly ahead the way she did, stopping at things that interested her, offering commentary over her shoulder, moving with the energy of someone who is too interested in the world to be slowed by it. Ava and Cole walked behind her at the pace the museum required, not quite touching, and then touching, the way that people did when the decision had been made, and the making of it was becoming ordinary in the best possible sense. Cole watched his daughter stop in front of a diorama of the deep ocean floor, the section with the anglerfish, the one they'd seen 4 times before, and explain something to a smaller child who had appeared beside her. The child's mother stood nearby watching, and Lily explained the bioluminescence with the authority of someone who had done the reading, and the child listened with the wide-eyed attention of someone encountering a new world. "She's going to be something," Ava said quietly. "She already is," Cole said. Ava looked at him. "She's 8, he said. "Being something at 8 counts. You don't have to wait until later to count as already being something." Ava thought about that. "You're right," she said. "I know," he said. "I'm right about some things." She bumped his shoulder. He didn't move away. Down the hall, Lily had finished her explanation to the smaller child and had looked back to find them. She found them where she expected them, because that was the arrangement now. Her ahead, moving at her own speed, looking back and finding them there. She nodded once with the specific economy of someone satisfied with the situation and turned back to the exhibit. The museum moved around them. The ordinary Sunday crowd of families and students and people who had decided that this was how they wanted to spend a November afternoon. The building doing its particular thing, holding the accumulation of human knowledge about the world in the specific fragile way that such things were held, imperfectly, incompletely, but with intention. Cole stood in the middle of it with Ava's shoulder against his and his daughter 30 feet ahead, illuminated by the blue light of an ocean she'd never seen but understood better than most adults, and let himself receive the moment as what it was. Not the end of something, not the resolution of a story, just a Sunday. Just this. Which was enough. More than enough. The right amount. For a life being lived forward rather than managed from behind glass. The anglerfish hung in its case above Lily's head, bioluminescent light fixed and permanent in the diorama, its trap always deployed and never sprung. Behind them, somewhere in the dark of the real ocean, the real ones moved in their lightless world, making their own glow, attracting what came toward it. Some of it was bait. Some of it was just light, present for its own sake, offered to the dark because the dark was where they lived. And living in the dark didn't mean you stopped being visible. It just meant the light you made was yours.